trash out for collection in bins of 55 gallons or less with a secure lid, and by June 2026 will be required to use the official NYC bin. This comes after months of outreach, including substantial work with your offices, and is being done with a focus on equity. As a result, something amazing is happening. The entire city is talking about trash cans. The official NYC bin will allow for the use of standardized mechanical tippers, which are cleaner and safer for sanitation workers, half of whose line of duty injuries are sprains and strains from throwing bags. And it is available now at bins.nyc for about a third the cost of what similar bins sell for at retail. New Yorkers have ordered nearly 450,000 of these bins so far, and we kept our promise that every single order placed before October 1st would be delivered by the time the mandate went into effect. Those bins are among nearly 300,000 that have made it to homes across the city already, with the rest well on their way. In addition to lower density residential buildings, this bin requirement also covers the trash from all houses of worship, city agency buildings, and other non-residential buildings that receive DSNY collection, like nonprofits, libraries, and hospitals. There will be a warning period for residential properties that runs through January 2nd, 2025, but let me be clear about what this rule means. 70% of New York City's trash in containers, a remarkable achievement that means fewer rats, reduced odors, and a reclamation of our public space. And we are certainly not stopping there. Mayor Adams has been clear. The plan is to containerize all trash across the entire city based on learnings from an upcoming pilot. In the spring of next year, DSNY will begin the installation of Empire bins, a European-style stationary on-street container for use by larger buildings, starting with Manhattan Community District 9 in West Harlem. Unlike similar on-street trash containerization programs in Europe, South America, and Asia, Empire bins will not be shared by the entire block, but rather assigned specifically to a large building for use only by that building's staff. This will prevent bins from overflowing and essentially uses New York City's density, one of the supposed stumbling blocks of prior containerization efforts, to our advantage going forward. The Empire bins will be required for all buildings in the pilot area with 31 or more units, and buildings with 10 to 30 units will have a choice of either opting in to request the use of Empire bins or containerizing via wheelie bins like the city's smaller residential buildings. When this first district is installed, there will be one entire part of the city with no bags of trash on the street, a perfect district to study and from which to plan expansion. This sweeping change to waste set out and collection is only one of several major new initiatives taking place at DSNY. After decades of attempts, we now have a universal, easy, accessible, and citywide curbside composting program, allowing all New Yorkers to set out their food scraps and yard waste every week on their recycling day. The response to this program has been astounding. Compostable waste diverted from landfill has risen 65% over the last 2 years, and enthusiasm is unabated, with Staten Island residents requesting more brown bins this summer and fall than any other borough. I would like to take the opportunity, as DSNY has done at 4 previous hearings, to again raise the issue of commercial organic separation. Local Law 146 of 2013 requires certain commercial establishments to separate their compostable material, but this law is now substantially out of step with the city's commitment to diversion of compostable waste. While the commercial waste zone system will improve commercial diversion, we also urge the council to consider an update that would allow DSNY to require source separation at all commercial establishments, in line with the progress made in residential diversion. And speaking of the commercial waste zone system, one of the other substantial overhauls of waste operations in New York City, we are now only just over a month away from full implementation of the first zone, Queens Central. This initiative will end what was functionally a wild west of commercial carting after Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso and others worked for years to develop a thoughtful system for calling in the cavalry, DSNY. When the first zone is fully implemented right after the new year, DSNY will gain significant new enforcement capabilities, but we are not waiting to make it clear that things have changed. DSNY enforcement personnel have issued 114 summonses to commercial carters in Queens Central since the enforcement period began, for everything from safety violations to offenses against basic cleanliness. This enforcement works. We are seeing drastic increases in compliance even before full DSNY authority takes effect. We have convened the Commercial Waste Zone Safety Task Force, overseen trainings, and engaged in substantial and ongoing outreach to businesses. As predicted, when Local Law 199 of 2019 went into effect, the Commercial Waste Zone program is leading to some industry consolidation. We remain steadfast in our commitment that there must be 3 carters per zone and that no carter may have more than 15 zones, including via subsidiaries, in order to maintain necessary market competition and keep prices down. In the case of current consolidation already underway that may necessitate a new award, we plan to use the existing RFP documents given their recency and continued relevance. In the future, as time goes on, that may change and new bids may be necessary. We continue to rely on the partnership of this council to make these long overdue changes a reality. With that in mind, I will now turn to the bills on today's agenda. The pre-considered introduction, sponsored by Councilmember Hudson, is essential to the success of the trash revolution. This bill will allow for a sustainable model for expansion of Empire Bin on-street containers beyond the pilot district. If you are interested in seeing full-scale containerization across the city, it must pass. And we support the concept of this legislation in the strongest possible terms. Our initial use of on-street containers in Hamilton Heights led to a 60% decrease in rat sightings on blocks that had the bins, while the rest of the neighborhood was flat on the same statistic. We know this works, and I want to thank Councilmember Hudson and Chair Abreu for their forward thinking in making sure that the M9 pilot has a mechanism for further expansion. Intro 57, sponsored by Councilmember Osei, is similarly important to our ongoing efforts. We strongly support the goal of making repeat cleanliness offenders pay for polluting our sidewalks and codifying containerization into law, and I look forward to working with you to advocate for this. Intro 498, sponsored by Chair Abreu, requires DSNY to collect waste from community gardens. The department already provides this service to any community garden that requests it, and we are happy to support the Chair's introduction, which will codify that important policy into law. The next 2 bills on the agenda today, Intro 698 and Intro 781, both sponsored by Councilmember Nurse, are a study in contrast around the diversion of beneficial reuse of compostable material. Intro 781 expands composting, requiring source separation at all city agency buildings. Mayor Adams made a promise that all DOE schools would separate their compost, and earlier this year, that promise was kept. With DOE already participating in this important program, DSNY supports this bill strongly. All residents and some businesses have to separate their compostable material, and city government should as well. It is frustrating, then, that Councilmember Nurse's other bill, Intro 698, could actually restrict access to composting by taking our extremely popular Smart Bin program and arbitrarily declaring that it does not comply with the existing legislation around food scrap drop-offs, in particular, Local Law 89 of 2023. This program is beloved, being used over 1.2 million times in fiscal year 24. Why, then, would the council simply say that it doesn't count, even though every single use of these smart bins keeps material out of landfill? It will be difficult for DSNY to justify the operating expenses of the smart bins if this legislation passes, and I must strongly oppose so that New Yorkers can continue to compost easily. The next bill, Intro 949, sponsored by Public Advocate Williams, has been reintroduced over a period of several years and calls for containerization of waste at certain large buildings. Containerization is absolutely the right idea, but this bill in its current form is not the right approach. As you all know, we are moving forward with a more fully developed citywide containerization plan, and I am in touch with the public advocate about aligning his bill with our work. The administration has similar feelings about the pre-considered introduction sponsored by Chair Abreu. The specifics of the trash revolution were not designed haphazardly, but rather based on a detailed volumetric analysis and block-by-block surveys. Last week, we began requiring all city agencies to containerize their trash alongside and in a similar manner to all businesses and all lower density residential buildings, because this analysis showed that this is the phase of the trash revolution in which city agency buildings belong. This legislation has a very important goal: to containerize city agency trash, but it requires even small schools and offices to use Empire bins, which our research shows are not appropriate in many cases. There certainly may be some municipal buildings that can support an Empire bin, and we would be happy to work with the chair on a revision that achieves the goal of universal containerization while maximizing the use of public space. Member Salam. Council that, thanks to careful strategic planning and contracting by DSNY, this bin is the cheapest of its quality by far, around $50, when similar bins can be well over $100. Number of bins purchased. Paying for one bin for each of the properties covered by this requirement would cost, and reimbursing all bins purchased to date would cost approximately $22 million. That is to say nothing of the logistical challenges involved in a reimbursement program, staffing and administrative costs. We maintain That said, we welcome the opportunity to work with the council to explore even more ways to help property owners get these bins, and the law department is reviewing the bill. Finally, we have Intro 1108, sponsored by Councilmember Menon. This bill thoughtfully identifies a loophole. Most cleanliness violations written by is based in our public realm and do not have a specific problem in our public realm. Reviewing the bill language. Councilmember Menon's leadership in introducing it, and we look forward to working with you together on it. Agenda, Reso 284, calling for mandatory composting at SUNY and CUNY campuses. This is a good idea that we are happy to support. Thank you, and we look forward to now taking your questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'd like to recognize that we have Public Advocate Williams with us, Council Members Bottcher, Carr, and I will now turn it over to our Public Advocate to give his opening remarks on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate it. First, I just want to say, Commissioner, just congratulations on some of the issues you've been working on, particularly getting trash out of our streets and into something, and dealing with the rats. And that's, even if there's not full agreement on all the legislation, I just want to make sure. I said that, as you said before, it wasn't rocket science. I'm not sure why folks haven't did it, but sometimes you just need the right person in the right position. So thank you so much for that. As was mentioned, my name is Jamani D. Williams, the Public Advocate of the City of New York. Thank you, Chairs Abreu and Juan, and committee members for holding this hearing. Today I'm introducing Intro 0949 of 2024, which requires that someone who manages or controls a building with 100 units or more provide a container for refuse. As of last week, properties with 1 to 9 residential units must use a secure bin with a lid for trash, recycling, or compost. However, we know that New York City consists of different sizes housing and buildings, and we continue to seek to curtail trash around the city as a whole. Any building, commercial or residential, with 100 units or more should have a large or ample-sized container for building residents to use. This will assist with rat mitigation and better the visual blight the city has endured that was exacerbated during the pandemic because everyone was working from home during the shutdown and generated more trash. Also, since the shutdown, many New Yorkers started working hybrid models, generating more trash from home as compared to when everyone worked in the office 5 days a week. Keeping the streets cleaner supports the city's sustainability goals to reduce gas emissions by 2050, allowing residents to have more access to space like sidewalks and bike lanes that will no longer have to face clutter from trash bags. Cleaner streets also assist with our carbon neutrality goals by encouraging New Yorkers to convert to containerization and explore pedestrian plazas and other open spaces that would otherwise be blocked by trash buildup. Less trash on the streets creates more sustainable transportation options and biking and other public transit while helping residents transition away from emitting gas. A 2019 report from the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, A Livable Climate, shared that over 1/3 of New York City's residential waste came from landfilling organic waste, which resulted in the release of methane, a greenhouse gas that warms the climate. The city has since begun to implement waste management strategies by mandating separate colored bins, containers with wheels to help separate waste, compost, which lowers methane and carbon, and other garbage. In addition, the city slowly rolled out the implementation of violations to allow New Yorkers a period of adjustment. New York City mandating an adjacent street to house a container for any building with 100 units or more is the next logical step for a city that is combating a rat epidemic. A larger onus will be placed on seeking private partners in the field of sanitation and waste management who are looking to partner with the city to design and market products that are reusable or recyclable. Purchasing trash bins or receptacles should not be seen as an additional cost to New Yorkers, as they will help mitigate unforeseen costs to sidewalks and properties, as well as prevent citizens from being consistently fined by the Department of Sanitation. As containerization begins to take effect, we have a responsibility to ensure that this program runs smoothly for sanitation workers, residents, and those visiting our city. In mandating receptacles to the city's largest buildings, we can start work to establish a system that addresses containerization for buildings less than 100 units that can work for everyone without sacrificing our goal for greener and more sustainable future. As the Commissioner mentioned, our office has been speaking, and I look forward to trying to figure out how our bill can more align with the work that's already being done. Thank you.
Thank you, Public Advocate. Commissioner, regarding I would like to also recognize Councilmember Palladino for joining us. Thank you. Commissioner, regarding your testimony on Intro 2746, I can say that we agree that we would require Empire bins where appropriate and where not appropriate. We need to make sure that trash is also containerized. So we're committed to working with your office to make our bill reflect what's practical.
Thank you. You've always been a very good partner to us, and we look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you, Commissioner. So now I'm going to ask my first set of questions before I pass it over to my co-chair here, Julie Wan. First set of questions are going to be on shared on-street containers. My first question is, the DSNY know if it will ever allow businesses which produce a high volume of waste to use on-street containers instead of smaller wheelie bins?
That is currently not contemplated, and I'll explain the thinking. A few things. First, commercial waste is collected not by the Department of Sanitation, but by a network of commercial carters, private companies. And for the department to implement these large on-street containers, we have to completely overhaul our fleet. We have to buy special trucks, automated side-loading vehicles that can hoist the on-street containers. To my knowledge, the commercial carting industry is not yet prepared to, its fleet is not prepared to hoist on-street containers. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, due to the nature of the commercial carting rules in New York City, you could have two businesses next door to each other that each have a different commercial carter. And that will be true even in the realm of commercial waste zones. And individual businesses in New York City, like the vast majority, do not produce enough waste to fill their own large 4 cubic yard on-street container. And because you can have two businesses next door that don't have the same carter, they can't share the bins. And for these reasons, we have determined that the wheelie bin is the appropriate solution for businesses in New York City at this time. And I'll just also add that I've been very pleased with the compliance level that I've seen among businesses with this wheelie bin mandate that has been in effect now for about 9 months. We started each phase with a warning period, and during that warning period when we were not issuing summonses, we saw compliance go through the roof. We are doing enforcement for the small percentage of businesses that are not yet complying. But I think that the level of compliance that we have seen shows that the wheelie bin model is one that works for businesses in New York City.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you please describe the types of buildings that typically use off-street containers and loading docks for their refuse collection?
Yeah, it's very large commercial and residential properties or properties in a campus type setting. They use off-street containers such as dumpsters or compactors at their loading docks. For these, collection is most often part of the initial design of a building or campus so that the proper infrastructure, i.e. the loading dock, can be put in place at the time of construction.
I'd like to recognize Councilmember Ressler has joined us, and Councilmember Salamanca on Zoom. During the Hamilton Heights Shared On-Street Container Pilot Program, the shared bins were regularly monitored and cleaned. Can you please describe how those monitoring and cleaning duties were performed?
Operations supervisors regularly monitored the Hamilton Heights pilot and provided cleaning and maintenance services as required.
And do you know what the fiscal cost to those duties performed was?
There are no specific costs for cleaning and monitoring, as those duties were absorbed by existing staff.
Okay. What challenges did DSNY observe with the maintenance of these on-street containers, and how will those experiences inform wider implementation of the use of these type of containers?
Actually, the pilot of the on-street containers was quite smooth, I have to say, in my opinion. We looked at maintenance issues and we tracked them very closely. I think the main issues that we had were with the lids, sometimes getting bent, and in certain circumstances with the wheels. The beauty of that is that for the go-forward plan with the Empire bins, the contract that Councilmember or Chair Wan referenced in her testimony, those Container bins, they don't have wheels and they don't have those lids that break. So I am not worried that the small number of maintenance issues that we saw in our pilot will be reflected in the go-forward plan.
The 2023 Waste Containerization Study found that refuse collection may need to double in some instances to make citywide containerization feasible on about 20% of our residential streets. Does DSNY intend to expand its collection schedules as the study found would be needed?
Yeah, Chair, I think you're referring to our Future of Trash report, which was our very first deep analysis of the possibility of containerization in New York City. Since that report, that initial report was published, we have updated our analysis and the report. And what the new analysis shows is that the number of 20% being incompatible with containerization is way too high. And that's because we changed the model between the time we wrote that initial report and today. And in particular, in that initial report, we had contemplated containerizing via Empire bins, both recycling all streams, so not just refuse, but also metal, glass, plastic, refuse, but also metal, glass, plastic, and compost. Today, the go-forward model that we are wheelie bins for compost until we see the amount of compost go up, in which case we'd be thrilled to add Empire bins. But because of that change in the model, we are going to be able to roll out Empire bins on the vast majority of streets and to the vast majority of buildings that would require them.
Would services need to be doubled under that?
No, we
Okay.
do not contemplate the need to increase service levels.
All right. What is the projected cost of the fleet needed to make on-street containers feasible?
The Commissioner of Management and Budget add the Commissioner of Management, but the automated side loading, we buy new trucks every year. Normal rollout citywide as we get old rear loading trucks to condemn or get rid of, they could be replaced by side loading vehicles, which we don't have a final cost for. But the cost of the side loader today, even in under the R&D contract, is not substantially higher than the cost of our standard collection trucks.
Do you know what that cost is per unit?
Joe, do you have that?
The cost of an automated side loader is $621,000.
And about how many of those you think we're going to need for realizing citywide?
I'll give you, for Manhattan Community Board 9, we have ordered 17 of them.
Wow.
16 of them.
So they're coming.
They're coming.
Coming in the next few months. That's exciting. What's going to be the cost of citywide containerization with just the bins themselves?
So I don't think I'm going to be able to give you a satisfactory answer, but let me point to the Container contract, which Chair Wan referenced. We recently registered a 10-year, $7 million contract with a company called Container to provide the large Empire bins and the services associated with them. Everything from manufacture, installation, cleaning, etc. So if we're using like very high level numbers, that's about $700,000 a year for Manhattan Community Board 9. That may not be what the cost is for every district, but I think it's a way of making it less amorphous.
Thank you. Most of the municipalities that have on-street, before I start, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Salam. Most of the municipalities that have on-street containers either don't get much snow, or if they do, like in Zurich, they have underground storage for those bins. What would be the plan for snow with on-street containers? While it hasn't snowed much as in previous years, we know that extreme weather events don't always go in one direction or the other, and we can still face challenging snow storms and blizzards in the future. Just figuring out, what's
Absolutely, and this absolutely needs to work when it snows. So a few things on snow. First, in our rules, the rules we've put in place to date, for example, wheelie bins, and also in the rules that we are contemplating for the large on-street containers, the Commissioner of the Department of Sanitation will have the authority to suspend bin requirements if it is ever necessary. And so then we would, the trash would go on the curb during the period of that, weather emergency, and we could collect that way. The other thing to add here is that property owners today have a requirement to clean the sidewalk in front of their property and 18 inches into the curb, both for litter and also for clearing snow and ice. The rules that we contemplate extend slightly that requirement on property owners to keep clean and clear the area around the bin that will be assigned directly to that building as well.
And my last question before I turn it over to Chair Wan. According to the DSNY's waste characterization study, about 80% of residential streets will be candidates for containerization. However, about 23% would not be viable even with doubled frequency, such as in neighborhoods north of Columbus Circle, the Finance District, Midtown West, and downtown Brooklyn. Can you speak more to these challenges and what could be possible in terms of trash management in these areas as the rest of the city moves towards containerization?
Yeah, I think that also references the first report we put out. It was more theoretical, our Future of Trash report. And as I mentioned before, as we've changed the model since that study was done, and we now think that there will be very few exceptions.
So is it fair to say that the Empire bin under this new model would be appropriate in these areas now?
I believe so.
All right, thank you. Chair Wong?
Thank you so much. I have a few follow-up questions. For the container contract of $7 million, you were saying that it's $700,000 per year just for Manhattan.
Roughly, yes.
So roughly it's about $700,000 per year for Manhattan Community Board 9. So that's about 10 containers? Oh,
No. It's
So
hundreds,
it's for-
if not thousands of containers.
And how many of them are, can you help me understand where they're being distributed other than Community Board
Sure.
9?
The
For that
way the
cost?
model works in Manhattan Community Board 9, starting this spring, every building of 31 units or more will get an Empire bin assigned to that building. Additionally, every building in Manhattan Community Board 9 with 10 to 30 units will be allowed to request or opt in to use an Empire bin, or they can say, we don't want an Empire bin, we want to use a wheelie bin like the 1 to 9 unit buildings in our district. That's why I can't give you an exact cost or an exact bin number, because I don't know how many of those 10 to 30 unit buildings are going to opt in. What I can tell you is we will know that number in January. And as soon as we have that number, we will both provide it as well as the costs associated, the more specific costs associated with Manhattan Community Board 9.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. So if you have not enough registrations or opting in, for those, since you're already contracted for $7 million, if Community Board 9 has an under registration and you still have money left over, could other community boards also sign up to opt into this program?
So the plan is to roll this out community board by community board. Obviously, if the pilot goes well, and there is certainly a lot to do with the pilot. So no, we would not have other community boards opt in if we get a low number of 10 to 30. We would just spend less money. And that is because the fleet that hoists these containers will be in Manhattan Community Board 9 in our M9 garage, not in other garages. Do you have something to add, Joe?
Yeah, I was just going to add that the pilot contract that we registered is specific to only one community district. It's not
Got it.
for an
Okay.
expansion.
I would like to register Community Board 2 in Queens to be the next pilot after Community
We
Board
look
9.
forward to your support of the RAD Act then.
Okay, I would love to work with you on that. I also want to follow up from our first question. You were saying, I love that you were doing this in phases, and it takes 9 months to go into effect. How long is the warning period that you have out of the 9 months?
For the wheelie bin? For the wheelie bins?
Yeah, for the current containerization with the wheelie bins for
Okay.
citywide.
So the mandate went into effect last week on November 12th, and we expect for the warning period to last through January 2nd, 2025. We don't want to be punitive here. We really just want to see compliance. And what we saw with businesses was that warning period really did give an opportunity to drive compliance, because the warnings look just like a summons. There is no cost attached.
Can you share that percentage? You said that there was a very small percentage of businesses that you did have to enforce. Do you know what that percentage was?
So we've written about between warnings and summons. Do you have the number here? I do. I just got to find it. Yeah, warning and summons combined is 60,000, but I can get you, I have it in this binder, the breakout of how many were warnings and how many were summonses.
Okay, great.
I think
We would like-
something like, yeah, 34,000 warnings and 27,000 summonses. So the majority were warnings, and the warning period was a month, and we've been writing summonses for about 8 months.
Okay. Got it. Okay. For more questions on legal or enforcement, does the city have a legal opinion from the law department on DSNY's authority to sanction or impose fines on bids when bids are supplemental or enhancing the services that are provided by DSNY?
Yes, the law department advised that DSNY may impose such fines and that it would be appropriate to clarify in a rule that the current activities of bids placing bags at the corner for DSNY pickup do not conform to DSNY standards for collection. The department will publish a proposed rule shortly that will allow bids to be the recipients of fines for bags that are not containerized rather than fining the individual who works for the bid or works on behalf of the bid, who places those bags on the curbs. That didn't feel right.
But if this went into effect on November 12th and the rules have not been published yet.
Different rule, two different things.
Okay.
On November 12th, let me give you the phases of the trash revolution, or some of the phases, the abbreviated version. First phase was businesses. Businesses, we started with food-related businesses, moved to chain stores, and then about 9 months ago, the wheelie bin requirement went into place for all businesses citywide. The second phase was residences, small residences, 1 to 9 unit buildings, as well as city agencies, houses of worship, et cetera. Mm-hmm. That went into effect on November 12th. This is a third phase, is the bids. And we are not contemplating the bin requirement for bids to go into place until August of 2025. So right now, we are working with the bids to plan so that they can meet the very same requirements that all 1 to 9 unit residences, all houses of worship, all businesses in the city are currently required to meet.
Thank you for that clarification. Can you share, because there's a lot of bid members who are here, or bid executive directors who are here, who want to know when these rules will be published?
The rules were actually just approved by the law department.
Okay.
And so it will certainly be published in the coming weeks, very soon.
Okay, so
I don't have an exact published date, but I will go back, get a published date, and get it to you.
Okay, but we could stand reassured that it'll be published before January 1st, 2025?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Will containerization of bid bag refuse be mandated in a rule and or through legislation? I guess you may not share that publicly right now, or could you share that?
My feeling is that bids need to comply with the very same rules that all of their individual members, all of businesses on commercial corridors comply with and have complied with very well for the past 9 months. I mean, if you walk down a commercial corridor today at trash time, you don't see as many big piles of bags on the street. You see wheelie bins, and it makes the commercial corridors look and feel so much better. If you walk down a commercial corridor now, a lot of the times, the only trash bags that you will see on the streets are the bid bags. And so all we're saying is that the bids will need to comply with the very same rules that their member businesses and 1 to 9 unit residences and churches and everyone else complies with in the city of New York. This is not intended in any way to be punitive or to be different than what all of their businesses do.
100% understand that sentiment, and we completely support containerization, but I think the tension right now is that there's a difference between the businesses that are containerizing their own trash versus the street trash, which is from the pedestrians and from the public, which isn't tied to an individual business or those members.
So I walk down commercial corridors and I see all of the business trash, which is the majority of trash, out in containers, and then literally next to every litter basket, I see mountains of garbage bags, and it's disgusting. We don't have to live that way, and we shouldn't live that way. And we have given the bids ample notice. We've been working with them for over a year. They have until August to comply. We're not mandating a containerization strategy. They can use wheelie bins, like every business in the city. If they have more trash than a wheelie bin would be appropriate for, they can use large on-street containers. We have a number of really big bids in this city that have already done this. The Downtown Alliance, Times Square. This is not rocket science, but it's a change. And it's an important change, and we want to give them time to figure out which strategy is going to work best for them, but we do expect compliance come August.
For pedestrian trash that is not connected to any business, and if you have a very busy corridor, so for example, in my district, under the 7 train, which Sunnyside Shines is responsible for, a very small bid with 2 people full-time on staff, they're going to be responsible for trash that is coming in that
let me
very
explain.
limited staff that they will have to figure out how to
The
pay for the
only
containers
difference-
as well as the pickup.
The only difference for the bid, well, today, they sweep up the trash on the street, they put the trash in a trash bag, and they leave the trash next to the litter basket. Or they see a litter basket is full, they take the bag out of the litter basket, they put it in the litter basket, they put a new bag in the litter basket. The only difference here is instead of putting those bags on the ground next to the litter basket, we are asking them to put it instead in a container. This is not a major change. Massive financial burden. I mean, for this, $50, around $50. Very high quality. Maybe they need a few. For larger bins, the large Empire bins are, I don't know, I'm giving you like a estimate is about $2,000. And that's an investment for the future. That's not $2,000 a year. That's $2,000 bin that lasts for 10 years.
For a larger bid, a $50 on both sides of the street, because it's going to have to be on the north end and the south end of every street. Those are already 2 containers, 2 times. So if you do the math, it may be a small dollar amount to purchase those containers for every single street side can. But for a smaller bid, it is not something that they can afford.
For the smaller bids, for many of the smaller bids, wheelie bins that are $55 will be sufficient. But every bid needs to look at it, and every bid needs to figure out how much trash they produce and what the right containerization solution is. That's why we have opened many options to them. And additionally, they are encouraged to work with our small business services who can make grants available to them to defray some of these costs.
So which grant are you referring to directly?
You would have to speak to our small business services about opportunities that they have to provide financial support to bids.
Because there currently are no grants available for my small businesses in any shape or form for the last 2 years since COVID has ended, and there has been no program to cover the supplemental for the cost of additional purchasing of these containers.
I look forward to working with you and with some of our deputy mayors and with the bids and with small business services to understand what can be done to defray some of the costs. But I want to be really clear and on the record that nothing about this is intended to target, harm, in any way our business improvement districts. They are very important partners to the city in many things, but chief among them, cleanliness. They provide an essential service, and what we are asking them to do is change a little bit. And I understand that change is hard, and we, the city, will be partners with them in every step of the way through that change.
Thank you so much, because I believe that our business improvement districts want to be a partner with us for cleanliness, for street cleanliness, and for containerization. But right now, a lot of them are struggling with, especially small businesses that barely keep their doors open. Increasing their membership will opt them leaving the bid entirely, and the bids themselves do not have access to capital to mass purchase these containers. So I'll definitely be following up with you and the bid associations to work with SBS to get a grant to purchase these bids, because once they're purchased, because the question just comes down to cost, then I think everyone will comply. Next question is, bids frequently witness street vendors and other businesses and or residents improperly disposing bags into the public receptacles. Which bids may bag up as part of the supplemental sanitation services? How will the city separate out this trash from other public trash when issuing a summons or illegal dumping, which we also see very often on the street trash cans?
Maybe I'm not understanding the question, but I don't envision very much will change. Can you clarify what you're asking?
So, for example, all throughout Long Island City, we see very often people are illegally dumping into the street trash cans, like into the better bins. And for them, they can have, if they purchase a container, their bid will be bagging them up.
Oh,
but sometimes people will also just add their own household
So
trash.
what we're doing, I recommend what we're doing on the residential model and what the Times Square Alliance does and what the Downtown Alliance does, which is lock the bin. So that the bins can only be accessed by bid staff.
Yes, but
that's how we're ensuring that there is no illegal dumping, for example, in residential bins. That's how the Times Square Alliance ensures that they don't have illegal dumping in their bins.
So not in the containers, but in the scenario that there are containers, we have figured out how to pay for them for the bids, but if somebody else illegally throws a trash bag of their household trash and it's on the sidewalk instead of in the container, which is not something that they can constantly surveil, how will you know who to summon?
We will write summonses not based on the existence of the bag, but based on an observation of who is leaving the bag. So if it is a vendor leaving the bag, the summons doesn't go to the bid, it goes to the vendor. But
what if no one is there to witness it?
If it is bid staff leaving the bag, that's how you ensure that the bids don't get dinged for trash that is not of their disposal.
Okay, so unless you physically witness a bid staff member failing to containerize, that's when they...
That's right. That's how our summonsing often works.
Okay, not if just a bag of random trash was found that does not...
No, because then they would be held unfairly responsible for trash that is not for their management.
Okay, thank you. Does DSOMY know if it will ever allow businesses which produce a high volume of waste to use on-street containers instead of smaller wheelie bins?
Yeah, I addressed this a bit in Chair Abreu's Q&A. Right now, the model that we are going with has wheelie bins for businesses because of the nature of the commercial carting industry, meaning you could have two businesses next door to each other that have different commercial carters, so they couldn't share a large on-street container. That happens all the time, and that will continue to happen even when we roll out commercial waste zones, because we have competitive commercial waste zones. And also the commercial carters are obviously private companies, and right now, to my knowledge, they do not have the fleet to support hoisting the Empire bins. That could change down the road, but the go-forward strategy right now is wheelie bins for businesses.
Got it. And I would also like to join Chair Abreu's support for the changes in the fleet so that we can continue to modernize our system. Can you please describe the types of buildings that typically use off-street containers and loading docks for their refuse collection?
Yeah, they're generally buildings that were initially designed with space for compactors or dumpsters or loading docks. I think these are some of the same questions that you're both asking.
I'll just turn it back to you.
I'd like to recognize Councilmember Banks, who has joined us as well. There are some remaining bid questions I had. Many bids have non-DSNY issued receptacles, such as Victor Stanley bins, which have been previously approved by DSNY. Under the new agreement, which trash receptacles will DSNY service?
Nothing changes about the trash receptacles.
Alrighty.
We just don't want bids leaving bags of trash on the ground next to litter baskets, whatever the litter basket is.
All right, I'm going to pivot now to Manhattan Community Board 9 Stationary On-Street Container Pilot Program. I know it's a favorite topic of yours and a favorite topic of mine. DSNY has proposed rules relating to the Stationary On-Street Container Program that will run in Manhattan Community District 9 starting next year indicate that buildings with 10 to 30 dwelling units must opt into the program before February 1st. Is this still the case? And if so, is DSNY engaged in any outreach to owners of buildings of this size in MCD 9 to inform them of the opportunity?
Yeah, I just realized I misspoke. I said to Chair Wan that we would know in January. We'll know in February how many of the 10 to 30 opted in. But it is the case that in Manhattan Community Board 9, buildings of 10 to 30 units will have about a 6-week period. The form open to opt in to use Empire bins. Otherwise, they will be using wheelie bins. The form will open on December 15th and close at the end of January. And we do have a substantial outreach campaign planned associated with the launch of that form.
Any idea on how many of them have opted in so far?
No, it doesn't open until December 15th.
Okay, so there's a plan in place.
We will know, we can keep you posted as the opt-in period goes, but we will know a more definitive number by February 1st.
Okay, and if there's any information you think we ought to be sharing to our constituents on that, let us know.
Oh yeah, we are definitely going to call on you, since you're the local council member, as we launch a major outreach campaign. The reason the outreach campaign hasn't started in earnest is when we do the outreach, I want to be able to point people to a form. And so it will start full scale December 15th when the form launches.
The proposed rules indicate that the stationary on-street containers and the area of the roadway extending 1 1/2 feet beyond each side of the container must be kept clean, well maintained, and clear of trash, debris, graffiti, vermin, food scraps, and unsanitary conditions. Who will be responsible for maintaining this level of cleanliness?
The property owner, much like they're responsible, the bin will be assigned to the specific building and will only be able to be accessed by the building staff. It's going to be a huge win for supers, by the way, because and buildings, they're not going to have to store the trash inside in a trash room. They can put it out at any time of the day they want, and they can use that bin for their trash storage. But today, property owners have the responsibility to keep clean the sidewalk and 18 inches into the street. That cleanliness requirement will be extended to include the area around the bin.
And so Container will not be required to maintain the bins?
I'm so sorry. I thought you meant like keeping it clean. The property owner will be responsible for keeping the area around the bin clean, the ground around the area clean and litter-free. Container will be providing deep cleaning services for the bins themselves because they are trash bins and they will need to be cleaned regularly, and that is part of that Container contract that I was discussing with Chair Wan. That is part of the cost, as well as provide, general maintenance if a part breaks, if the bin gets damaged.
But the cleanliness around the bin, that's the property owner.
Correct.
And will they be cited for failure to maintain this level of cleanliness?
After a warning period, I'm sure. But again, with all of these rule changes, we have made sure to put in place thoughtful warning periods. We do not want to be punitive. We do not enjoy being punitive. We really just want to drive compliance. And so far in the trash revolution, I am very pleased with the level of compliance that we're seeing.
We have two major NYCHA complexes in that area, Manhattanville houses and Grand houses. Will they be included in the pilot program?
Yes.
Great. All right, I'm going to turn it over now to Councilmember Julie Menon for questions or testimony.
Thank you.
And I would like to recognize
Can I
Councilmember
clarify?
Yeager.
Yes, to the extent that they're not already containerized, meaning if those complexes leave their bags on the street, then yes. Some NYCHA complexes already are containerized with compactors and that type of thing.
I'll come back to that.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair. Commissioner, thank you for your testimony. Had a couple follow-up questions regarding my bill, proposed intro 1108. Can you explain what currently happens if an entity has a franchise agreement with the city on a public space and does not keep the street clean? What happens currently now?
Yeah, we can't do anything. Like, the Department of Sanitation is literally powerless to enforce the cleanliness rules that we enforce for every business and every residence in the city for these entities that occupy massive portions of our curbside space. So bus shelters, city bikes, the new micro hubs. We absolutely need the authority to hold these companies that manage, maintain, operate these programs accountable for the very basic rules that we have in New York City around cleanliness. Nothing more than we require of anyone else, but certainly nothing less.
Great. And can you quantify, if this bill goes into effect, the difference that it will make? I mean, how many of these public spaces would you estimate that we have that you're not currently able to have jurisdiction over?
I'm embarrassed that I can't give you an answer, but like anecdotally, there is one on at least half the blocks in New York City. I mean, with the proliferation of the city bike and the bus shelters and the micro hubs going all over, that's envisioned to go all over the place, like, we need this. The city needs this for its cleanliness.
Great. Those are my only questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Commissioner, is the contract that DSNY has with Container for large stationary on-street containers worth approximately $7 million intended only to serve the on-street container program that would run in Manhattan District 9 starting next year, or is the contract more expansive in that it includes the possibility of producing on-street containers for buildings in other areas of the city?
I just want to be clear, it's a 10-year contract. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea that this is $7 million a year. It's a 10-year contract. It covers the containers that we would need specifically for the pilot district, Manhattan Community Board 9. And when we bid this thing out, we bid it out in phases. So we said, phase 1 will be Manhattan Community Board 9. All the bidders, you give me a cost and a model for it. When we said phase 2 would be additional future expansion. So if things work great in Manhattan Community Board 9, we do not have to start the contracting process over from step 1. We do not need to issue a new RFP and go through that year-long process. It will be much more abbreviated given how we chose to manage the procurement.
So this existing RFP can be used for potential pilot expansions and things of that nature?
Yes,
Okay.
that's how it was intended.
All right, and my other question is regarding Hudson's bill. Could you please summarize for us how many buildings would be covered by this bill, and what is the breakdown by building type and city agency?
So I love her bill.
I'm sure.
I call it the RAT Act. And what the RAT Act will do is allow us to containerize all buildings of 31 units or more citywide And any 10 to 30 unit building that opts in to do it. I don't know how many of the 10 to 30 unit buildings yet will opt in, although when we see what happens in the pilot district on Community Board 9, we'll be able to estimate it better, the citywide number, so I can't give you a number right now.
Do you have a number with the 30 plus units that would be covered by this bill?
Funny answer.
Mr. Chair, the two groups together, the 10 to 30s and the 31 pluses, is about 40,000 buildings. I'm sure we have a breakdown between the two and could get it back to you, but all told, it's about 40,000 buildings.
And would NYCHA's non-residential buildings be covered also?
We do intend to cover NYCHA non-residential buildings that are not currently containerized.
All right, I'm gonna turn it back over to our chair.
Chair, can I just go back to the question you had before about Manhattanville and Grant? Those are currently on our roll-on, roll-off service, so they wouldn't be part of the stationary on-street container program.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass it over to Lincoln Ressler to ask his questions.
Thank you so much, Chair Abreu and Chair Wan. I appreciate you both. Thank you for holding this hearing. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. I especially enjoy catching up with Sean whenever I can on all things garbage. Commissioner Tisch, I think that your tenure at the Department of Sanitation has been like the top highlight of this administration. And I really appreciate the hard work that you and your team have done to try to clean up our streets. It's no easy task, but I think that the work that you're doing and the vision that you're laying out is impressive, and appreciate the service that, you know, and appreciate your service and your leadership. I have a few questions, mostly trying to just kind of better understand this. I get a lot of incoming from community members. Whenever there's change, there's questions and concerns. I really love these Containerization bins and what you're doing in Sean's district and Chair Abreu's district in West Harlem. And I have brownstone communities that are not more than 10 units, not more than 30 units, that would also really like these bins on their blocks and in their streets. In fact, they're struggling with some of the changes to containerization, and I can get into that in a little bit, but is there a world in which we can have some more flexibility and see this model also available in some lower density areas, 1 to 4 family areas, on average, but, brownstone communities like Brooklyn Heights or Cobble Hill, places that Borum Hill would love to see that model of containerization?
The answer is yes. It is definitely possible. It is, as you know, not currently contemplated. But I'm happy to have follow-up conversations with you about it. I'll say I am a little surprised and pleased to get this question, because a lot of the feedback that we have heard is in lower density parts of the city where you don't have the big buildings. We've heard anecdotally that they don't want the on-street containers because it does have implications for parking. In Manhattan Community Board 9, for example, our environmental review estimates it, again, we don't know how many 10 to 30, but about 2-3% like that. But I would be happy to follow up with you and speak to your constituents so that if we have to make an adjustment in our planning, we can.
I think the conversation that Chair Abreu and I have been having is like, different communities may want different things, and having that flexibility is important. And I can say, in my community, we are totally happy to do the trade-off of a parking spot here and a parking spot there for a more seamless containerization of our garbage. And so if we can follow up, I appreciate it and would love to make that happen. Would it be okay if I just ask a couple more questions?
Please go ahead.
Thanks so much. I'm concerned, so nonprofits, some of my yeshivas get lumped in to the 1 to 9 residential units, and therefore have had some challenges with the new containerization model. Even they who love, in South Williamsburg, there's always a reticence to lose parking, but I think even that community would be open to a trade-off of being able to have the Containerization bins in their community as well.
Yeah, understood. And I want to be very clear that we by no means want or expect or require schools, any schools, public schools, private schools, parochial schools, we do not require them to use 55-gallon wheelie bins for their trash. They produce lots of trash.
Yeah.
And so the option that, for example, the DOE schools have gone with are these quite large tilt trucks that our sanitation workers can operate. They're much bigger than 55 gallons, but they're lower to the ground. They're on wheels, and that is the model that DOE is using right now in this gap, because they are required to put their trash in containers, but they don't have the Empire bins yet. And so that is what I recommend to any school. And we've had a few yeshivas approach us, any yeshiva that approaches us about it.
That's very helpful. We have gotten a bunch of complaints, and so we will help guide them in that direction. And then two really last questions on just the containerization for the 1 to 9 residential units. One, and we've gone back and forth with your team on this again, but I want to continue to raise it. We have seen on the NYC Bin Company's website that they have a 25-gallon option. I have a lot of brownstones in my district that have built enclosures in front of their homes, and they can't fit these larger bins in the enclosures that they've constructed. They could fit a 25-gallon bin. That would accommodate their trash needs. Could we look again to see if the new mechanized kind of garbage pickup with these trucks could accommodate the 25-gallon bin?
Yeah. So we offer two sizes now,
Right.
45 and 35. And what you're saying is you want a smaller option of the
Yes.
25.
And-
I'm happy to go back and
And the
look at
company creates it. I don't know if it works with the truck. I don't really, but if there's any way to make that work, I have just many homeowners. They built out these fancy, nice enclosures for their garbage. They look perfectly pretty.
Yeah.
They don't work with the 35 and 45 gallon bins.
I apologize. I generally, when we do contracting, we like to make sure that it accounts for everything. That would require an amendment to the contract. It is certainly something that we can do. It just happens not to be a quick process.
If it works operationally, and it could be an amendment that would take effect for spring of 2026, when this would be required, it would be something that would build a lot of goodwill in my community for sure. And then lastly,
I'm kicking myself because in that contracting process, we did a 65-gallon, but we didn't do a 25-gallon. Anyway, go ahead.
well, if it's possible, it would be a big win, and we'd appreciate it. And then lastly, and this is just maybe me being dense, per usual, but I struggle to just understand the idea of using these NYC bins and the trucks is to mechanize the pickup, right? And make it easier for the sanitation workers, better for the world. But ASP isn't in effect. So are we rolling these bins to the corner for them to be linked to the truck to be picked up? Is that how this is going to work operationally? It's just, I'm thinking about dense, narrow streets.
It's two different models. For the smaller buildings, they're putting the trash in the wheelie bins, and for the
Yeah,
large-
that's what I'm talking about. For the smaller buildings with the wheelie bins, you're rolling them to the corner to be.
So we have the sanitation workers. They have two options. They can take the bags manually
Right.
out of the wheelie bin. These bins, the largest one is 45, our requirement is 55 gallons or less, so that they can physically reach into the bottom, so they can manually throw every bag as they do today. Or if there is space between the cars, they can wheel the bin out and put it, all the new trucks are coming with these tippers, double tippers, so they can do two at once. Double tippers, where they can just put the latch on the tipper and mechanically tip it.
That sounds like a great policy.
I'm going to move on
Good.
now
Thank
to
you very much. I appreciate
Councilmember
the time.
Botcher.
Hi, Commissioner. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I want to commend you for all the progress that the city's made on containerization.
Thank you.
In just under 3 years, when a lot of us were talking about containerization when we were running for city council. I don't think we would have anticipated making so much progress with respect to all the new policies that have already gone into effect. When you and I got together, when you first got appointed, we talked about containerization for 90 minutes, and you've done a lot.
Thank you.
As we see it implemented, including for small building owners, I think one of our big challenges is going to be working through the individual cases in which it's hard for small building owners to follow the letter of the regulations. And I wanted to ask, now that the policy is in effect and building owners are being asked to do it, we're really going to see who can and who can't, like physically. So what is the mechanism going to be for your small building owner who doesn't have any room for the containers? How do you make sure that that person can get into compliance?
Change is hard, and this change is a change that affects how every business and virtually every residence in the city does something that they do several times a week. So I get it. This is big change to an important thing, and I by no means trivialize it. When we rolled out the container mandates for businesses, we heard a lot of the same feedback. Oh, we're never going to be able to do this. It's never going to work. In my specific circumstance, it just isn't going to work. And guess what? Everyone figured it out. We certainly see mass compliance among businesses. And I think that's partially due to the fact that we tried to be very thoughtful at the outset in the rule drafting about the concerns people would have. So as an example, we were incredibly flexible with where the bins can be stored, indoors, outdoors, along the property line, within 3 feet of the property line. And so we are happy to work with any business that may be struggling, but I am very confident that what we have put forward is a flexible plan that can be complied with.
Okay, so in the coming weeks, will you be able to have individual consultations with property owners and help them come up with plans that comply?
Josh is a deputy commissioner who's brilliant, but among the things he does
We
is
love Josh.
all of our outreach, so Josh will take that one.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Councilmember. So there are a number of opportunities for individual residents to get assistance with their containerization strategies. We have weekly info sessions on this topic. Any member of the public can attend one and ask questions. So I want to mention that there actually are 2 forms through which someone can apply for an exemption. One is for disability, right? I have a disability that prevents me from complying. And one is I live in a situation where the bins would present a pedestrian hazard. There is, no pedestrian access if I have these bins. We are going to look at every application that comes in on both of those. We are going to take a hard look at them. Obviously, our inclination is to say everyone has to follow this rule. But you can go to nyc.gov/DSNY and tell us your situation now or get assistance now.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I apologize. I had a hard stop at 11:40. The rest of the team will remain and answer any questions. And if anyone wants to follow up directly with me, I am always available.
Thank you.
And just, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I know we lost Councilmember Menon, but I do have some information on her question before about how many areas may be covered by her bill. There are 51, just to put it in the record, there are 51 active franchise agreements in the city. Obviously, many of them have hundreds or thousands of locations, but there are 51 franchise agreements, so that's at least some quantity to cover her bill.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Will DSNY confirm in writing that they will collect bags from containers that are part of the Clean Curbs program? Because currently there is no assertion in the Clean Curbs pilot program.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, just to clarify the questions, will we continue to collect from the Clean Curbs bins? Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. And will DSNY agree to a specific number of pickups and collection times for each bid, including what days, times, holidays DSNY will pick up from the containers and other public receptacles?
DSNY does need to maintain flexibility about our collection schedule, things like snow emergencies, but we are always in touch with our bids and are happy to remain in touch with our bids about the general level and time of frequency as long as there's understanding that circumstances may require a change.
Okay, and will DSNY acknowledge that they will be accepting bags from bids at the DSNY garages or other agencies' designated locations?
I will acknowledge that under the proposed rule that is coming out in the coming weeks, One of the options will be to have those discussions. There are labor concerns about some of the specifics. It is something we want to offer as an option, and we look forward to working with individual bids that are interested in that to see if it is viable for them in their area.
And will DSNY facilities accept bids bags from private carters that they may hire?
Again, it's something where we'd have to look at the labor specifics, make sure that there's no displacement of the DSNY workforce involved in that. If there is not, if it's an option we can work out, we would like to work it out.
Okay, great. And how will the city work with bids on selecting sites for containers? And will the city inform property owners and businesses of locations adjacent to them?
We will work together carefully and closely on that.
Do the siting and container specifications need to comply with the clean curbs
No.
for bids? Okay.
No, this would be a new set of, or at least it would be an additional set of standards that would be available. We really do want to add as much flexibility to this as possible. And I know there's been a lot of anxiety and potentially misinformation about it. The idea is to develop a solution that works for every bid to just meet a simple goal of no bags on the street.
Okay, and containers can be placed on the sidewalk?
Sidewalk, street, we're happy to work with them on as long as it meets existing rules about pedestrian access.
And will the city allow for containers to be sited in locations that are not currently in a DSNY route? And if so, will DSNY collect bags from those locations if they're part of the bid?
The short answer is probably. There's always a situation where you've identified a location that the bid would prefer, and there's, hey, listen, there's a one-way street right there. We really can't go that way with the truck. Generally speaking, we would like to be flexible in making this work.
Certain districts have bus lanes or bike lanes that occupy the curb. How will this impact implementation?
Just coordinate with DOT and we'll figure out what the right locations are.
And there's currently a backlog of container approvals in the city clean curb pilot program of 6 weeks or more. Will there be a grace period for bids that have applied for locations but are waiting for city approval?
Of course, absolutely.
Does the Public Design Commission need to approve these containers?
The ones that bids would use, no. If they are temporary wheeled containers, they would not require PDC approval, as far as I know.
And what will happen when complexities prevent a bid from physically being able to comply via siting or funding?
If we come out and the bid leadership comes out and we spend a period of weeks analyzing it and we can't find any viable option, we would have to have that conversation. I mean, as I just mentioned to Councilmember Botcher, we obviously have a limited number of exemption processes in place. I believe that there will be very few, if any, situations where no solution is found, given the number of flexible options we intend to offer. But certainly, if there is no way to do it, there's no way to do it.
Okay. Will the city provide resources for small bids and in less privileged areas? If so, we talked about how we're going to work with SBS for a grant. Is DSNY planning to reduce the levels of services as part of this program?
No.
If not, will additional DSNY pickups occur given the concentration of waste and limited capacity in each container?
Well, we'll look at what's necessary. And, the point is to not leave the trash out there. So if we are not confident from our analysis that additional service is necessary, but if there's an area where that is part of the approach, we're happy to have that conversation.
And if a bid is not able to comply and they're forced to suspend supplemental sanitation services, will DSNY provide additional collection services in those districts that bids opt out of?
DSNY is not forcing anyone to suspend its supplemental sanitation services. I do not anticipate that there will be any issue with those services continuing as long as the bid does want to continue to offer them.
Okay, last question is for the SBS grant. We're about to embark on a new budget process starting January. That means that even if we are able to negotiate this funding for the SBS grant to go to small businesses for the bids to be able to comply to the purchasing of containers, that's not going to be until June of 2025. And once the capital funds are released for them to purchase and for the orders to be placed, I fear for the timeline that we have for 2025 that you have for the bids. So I just want to make sure that we are having those conversations, and I'm going to turn it back to Chair Abreu.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I have questions on New York City bins, specifically wheelie bins for the 1 to 9 unit properties. Up to now, how many bins have been ordered for us by buildings with up to 9 residential units?
About 450,000.
Okay, that's a pretty significant number. How many bins are outstanding such that homeowners are waiting for bin delivery?
We get thousands of new orders a day, so there will always be bins that have been ordered and not delivered. We've delivered well over 300,000, including The commitment when pre-orders opened July 8th was that if you placed your order by October 1st, you would receive your bin by the start of the mandate, November 12th. That was about 215,000 people ordered in that period. Every single one of them got their bin. And we've delivered another 100,000 or so since then, so in just the period since November 12th, which is, only 8 days. So there are a number of bins left to be delivered. They are on their way in the coming weeks, and obviously that's part of the reason why the warning period is in effect until January 2nd.
Do you have any estimate of how many outstanding bins there are that need to be delivered?
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 to 110,000. We could get an exact number.
And it's fair to say that at least 300,000 were already delivered?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And 450 is like the overall
So far, but
level.
again, thousands of bins are ordered every single day.
How many a day are you, on average, you're getting?
It basically comes and goes depending on whether you talk about the bins that day or not. We see a big bump from the Sean Abreu Twitter feeds in bin orders and, when everybody's on television. But we've had orders from, a few hundred to 10,000 in a day. And we expect that to continue for a while and then to die down when the bins are saturated in the market and everybody has one. Oh, and I'll just mention, by the way, that there is now, as you may have heard, an additional option, or in addition to being able to get them online at www.bins.nyc, they're now at every single New York City Home Depot store. There are 22 Home Depots in New York City, and you can get the NYC bin at all of those locations for the exact same price down to the cent as online. That was pretty amazing to get a major retailer to not do any markup. So you can order online for in-store pickup, or you can just go by and get them if you don't want to wait for delivery.
Okay. Do you anticipate that all the bins will be delivered by the time that enforcement will begin?
Well, all of the bins that have been ordered by now, yes. But if you order your bin on December 31st, no, it won't be there January 2nd, right? And that's why.
So if you're a property owner, you order by December 31st, there's a possibility that you can be penalized for not having.
You should have ordered your bin a long time ago. The orders opened July 8th. At a certain point, you run the risk of a summons, and then you get your bin and you stop getting summonsed.
And is the marketing efforts still in full force
Absolutely.
to make sure people are ordering their bins?
Knocking doors, speaking at community boards, doing press, and everything we can in social media, whatever we can, and appreciate your continued partnership on that. But obviously, if 450,000 of them have been ordered, the word is out there.
After 2026, when city-approved refuse bins are required for use by low-density buildings, will a building owner be issued a violation for setting their MGPP recycling out in a container that is not in a city-approved bin?
No, that rule only applies to refuse.
DSNY rules allow residents to use a refuse container that is up to 55 gallons in size, but Otto's website only gives users the option to order a refuse bin that is at maximum, 43 gallons in size. Will residents have the option to purchase a 55-gallon bin from Otto in the future? If so, when will this option be available?
Let me answer that question, Mr. Chair, but first let me just clarify. I think I misunderstood your previous question. After June 1st, 2026, MGP and paper will be able to continue to go out in a bag, as they are now. If you put them in a bin, it has to be the NYC bin. No, like your own recycling bin. You don't need a bin, but if you use a bin, it has to be the NYC bin. So just to clarify that, I misunderstood your question. On your question about the size of the bins, the 55-gallon maximum is a long-standing limit in DSNY rules, and it was actually developed based on the weight and size of a bin, the ability of sanitation workers to get the bags out of it. It was crafted without any consideration of what kinds of bins are actually produced. 35, 45 are standard sizes. A 55-gallon bin is actually not a standard size that is made. We are looking into whether it would be possible to produce a 55-gallon bin without a substantially increased cost, given that it would be a custom job. If that's something that we can do, it is something we are interested in doing. But the issue is that a 55-gallon bin was set based on weight, not because it's an industry standard size that exists.
So something that's still being considered.
It is absolutely being considered.
The agreement between DSNY and Otto includes a scope of service, which describes that Otto could be required to manufacture bins 60 to 65 gallons in size. Does DSNY intend to activate this section of the scope of service so that New York City residents can purchase this larger bin?
It is something that we are considering once those double rear tippers reach full fleet saturation. A 65-gallon bin would be far too heavy for a sanitation worker to lift. They are New York's strongest, but there's still a limit. If we get to the point where there is no lifting required anywhere in the city, a 65-gallon bin is something we would like to have the contractual option to produce.
Will Otto honor a purchase by council members using their discretionary funds for residential wheelie bins to then provide the bins to their constituents for free?
Yeah, of course.
How is the concessionaire making deliveries from North Carolina to New York City?
They have a warehouse in Brooklyn.
Say that again?
They have a warehouse in Brooklyn, so they bring them up from their factory and they warehouse them in Brooklyn, and then they have box trucks that go around and deliver them.
Are bins being shipped in mass or via individual orders?
No, in mass. There's the routing software, so they'll like load up a truck, and okay, today we're delivering all these. That's why sometimes you might think like, as a resident, it's a good thing to just be able to put out there. Like, well, I ordered mine, November 7th, and my neighbor ordered his on November 18th. How come we got them the same day? Well, it's because routing efficiencies, right? We deliver them the same day, but you both still got them in a...
And how are they getting to the warehouse? Is it rail, truck, trailer?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I could ask Otto if you're interested. I would imagine it's a combination.
Yeah, if you can just get us that answer, that would be great, if you don't have that right now. We've been told at hearings that if bins are stolen, people can file a police report and call their local precinct. What kind of interagency coordination is planned so that NYPD is informed of this policy and constituents are able to seamlessly make a claim?
The police report process obviously is a well-established NYPD procedure for stolen property. Our enforcement team will coordinate with the NYPD to make sure that there's the appropriate level of cross-agency coordination.
Is this a concern that the department shares of like this frequency?
About stolen bins in generally? Obviously it's something that we hear a lot, people's concern about it. I have to tell you, so I'm speaking anecdotally here, but when I hear about it, it's in a hypothetical. Isn't my bin going to be stolen? And you hear all kinds of, I bet that someone's going to, Chicago has bins. Pittsburgh has bins. Detroit has bins. A lot of cities that are a lot more dangerous than New York have bins. There is not some sort of perpetual epidemic of bin theft. It's one of those things that may be a problem during a rollout period, and we were concerned about it, which is why the bins have a big white space on the side to write your address. It is why they have an RFID tag, and it's why they have a serial number.
Thank you. Some constituents are concerned about having multiple bins out on their block at any given time, like trash, recycling, organics. Can you speak to those concerns?
I would say that many constituents are also concerned about having bags of trash out on their sidewalks.
That is true. That is true. We know that constituents care about a lot of things. And so you're saying that there's a largely high compliance rate. You have a number of...
Very high.
Of like, how many of them are getting stolen versus...
Oh, on theft? No. It's not something that we've received meaningful reports on. It's something that is almost always reported to us as a hypothetical. What if my bin gets stolen? Not my bin has been stolen.
And I also understand that, perfect can't be the enemy of the good here. Things do happen. But, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to everybody's concerns.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Botcher, I understand you have more questions.
Hi. Josh, a lot of my bids are here from throughout my council district, and they're here because they're not happy with, generally speaking, a lot of them are telling me that they're not happy with how things are going with the dialogue with the Department of Sanitation. And a lot of them are shaking their heads yes as I say that. They were shaking their heads no to a lot of the stuff you were saying before. How are you communicating with them? Are you meeting regularly with them? Are you really making an effort to understand how their operations work? They're telling me that a lot of the things you're asking them to do run afoul to their contracts, both with the city and other vendors. They're telling me that some of the things that you're asking them to do would require landmarks approval, Public Design Commission approval, because they're not going to do the wheelie bins. They would want like fixed containers. But generally speaking, will you commit to meeting, sitting down with them physically and meeting,
Of
talking
course,
through it?
and I will tell you, Councilmember, that I would like to have a lot more meetings on this topic because we've had, quite a few, the bid association and with many of the individual bids, both at the policy-making level and at the operational level. Our chief of cleaning operations has met with a number of the bids directly. I would really like this to continue, particularly because it's obvious from the sort of murmurs and whispers that I've heard behind me that there's a tremendous amount of misinformation about the proposed policy. Which again, there's no draft rollout. There's a considerable rollout time still to come. There's room for site visits and negotiations and conversations. And I am concerned that many of these civic leaders seem to have a misunderstanding about what the proposed policy is or will be. So I appreciate you raising it because I would be ecstatic to continue to meet with these groups and clear that up.
So next week is Thanksgiving week, but perhaps the following week you would sit with them. There's a lot of them, so maybe break it up by borough or something. Would you do that?
Yeah, we'll work on an exact date. I don't want to, commit and then it turns out someone's on vacation, whatever. But yes, these meetings have to continue to happen. Because again, just to restate, the core of the policy is very straightforward. All the businesses and many of the residents are not allowed to leave a bag of trash on the street. And the idea is that a bid bag, which again, historically, the bid bags were the most well-managed trash in the city. It was great, it was amazing. You walk down the street and the bid bags are nicely, put together on the corner. But now, because of the progress and the forward march of the trash revolution, the bid bag trash is just about the only uncontainerized trash left in some of these neighborhoods. So the point is to come up with a solution, any solution, that gets it off the street. And if a bid is saying, well, we would require landmarks approval for on-street containers, then they can use wheelie bins. Well, we don't want to use wheelie bins. Okay, then let's begin the landmarks process. Any one of these questions has a solution, so let's get to work on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. We're gonna now pivot to questions on organics, and I think that would be the end of my set of questions. We've heard from buildings having a hard time coming into compliance with organics, despite a real desire to do so. They note issues with smell, storage, and other complications. Our office has been coordinating with buildings, has been connecting buildings to community composting groups like the Lower East Side Ecology Center who are doing on-demand trainings. Mm-hmm. I know Councilmember Bottcher is doing that as well in his district. What is DSNY's plan to make use of the warning period prior to issuing violations for failure to recycle organic waste?
We do offer our own trainings as well, and we've done a number of site visits. We've met with everybody who's asked for a meeting with DSNY to go over it. We're engaging in continued outreach during what we're in this statutory warning period now under Local Law 89 of 2023, where separation of organic waste is required, but we may not yet issue fines until the spring of 2025. So outreach is ongoing. We are working with the community compost organizations to make sure that they're sort of aligned with us and that we're reaching complementary audiences. On the sort of smell and storage issue, it's one where I think, again, the real issue is just the challenges in making change. The curbside composting program doesn't create new waste. It just sorts it differently. So it's like that stuff was already in your trash room. So I've never been really clear on what the issue is there, but we're continuing to work. We have a dedicated team that does building site visits around this topic, and we're going to continue to meet with anybody who needs our assistance.
You mentioned that you've had a number of meetings with everyone who's reached out to you. What are those meetings?
Well, we have, and I think I have a number.
What
here,
meetings
actually.
like?
We have a number of programs that are different types of trainings. We have a clean buildings training for city agencies. We have one for building maintenance staff. We have one specifically for NYCHA. And we trained over 900 people in FY24. We've actually done 750 already in FY25. So we're way on track to outpace that across these different training types. All of this is available to sign up for on our website. And then we also share information about it at outreach events and community boards.
What type of in-person contact is DSNY engaged in?
So these trainings would be one of the main pieces. We have door knocking still ongoing in the 3 boroughs that just started receiving service. As you recall, we knocked every door in the 1 to 9 unit buildings in Brooklyn and Queens when their service started, and now we're doing the 3 remaining boroughs. that includes information about how to get an info session. So we've got people out there knocking doors now.
What type of coordination is being done with community composting groups that are doing a lot of education and outreach at this moment?
So far, some, with a plan to do a lot more. So far, because those contracts have just sort of been coming online after the FY25 adopted budget, we have shared all of our outreach materials and have had conversations about, hey, this is what we're giving out at the doors. Would love it if you were giving it out at the doors too. You know, please take this to your outreach events. We've provided a lot of materials. But going forward into the new year, we plan to work with those groups more closely on specific coordination around like, hey, can you, do some work in this neighborhood? We're getting a lot of questions from here. Can you help us with that? So some now, those conversations are ongoing, and we certainly want to ramp it up.
When is enforcement going to start?
I believe the law says April 2025. It might be March 2025. Whatever it says in local law 89.
So there's ample opportunity here, right?
Yes, absolutely there is.
To be partnering with these community composting groups. We secured $6.6 million in fund in this past year budget for them. They're a tremendous resource for raising awareness, getting people excited about this. As I've indicated in past hearings and throughout the budget fight, I think now is the time. Let's come up with a plan, and I would love to see more collaboration between DSNY and community composting groups. Previously, DSNY told us that tenants and building residents would be responsible for reporting lack of brown bins in their buildings. I want to state again that I'm very concerned with putting the onus on tenants, especially considering how unresponsive management can be, and many tenants, quite frankly, feeling afraid to speak up about some of these issues. What is the current data on warnings that DSNY has given buildings so far?
Yeah, I will just say on your concern about whether it's something that tenants would be comfortable doing, it can be done anonymously through 311 for what that's worth. There is a 311 to report building not composting. And as with any 311 SR, you don't have to give your name. I don't have a number on the warnings. We can look into it. But, the other thing to keep in mind around this, I know it's a new program. We have about 20 years of enforcement practice around failure to separate MGP paper, right? And the process is basically the same. If you lived in a building that wasn't recycling, you would either report it through 311 or you would talk to your building management. And our enforcement is the same. We go and check out what's left out at the curb. And that's what we intend to continue to do, is to treat it just the same as other forms of recyclable material.
I'm curious to know why the department doesn't have a number of warnings so far, since it's been implemented now for weeks.
Sure, I just don't have it in front of me. I mean, I know that the topic of this hearing was containerization. So failure to source separate is something that we can pull for you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was notice given that this hearing would also cover organics.
I missed it. Yes. I thought it was containerization of organics, but I apologize that we don't have it in front of us.
Just making sure we don't like to blindside anyone.
No, we thought we read it as containerization of trash and organics.
Okay, no, so if you can get us that information,
sure, we can.
That would be great. And I hope the numbers are high, because we want buildings to be compliant. And if they're low, let's start enforcing, because this is something that we need to make sure that we're diverting from the landfill. And again, for the reasons I mentioned.
Completely agree.
What is the plan for robust enforcement after the warning period? And how does the SNY plan to engage large buildings in particular, which we've seen to be the slowest to come online?
Yeah, it's functionally the same as our enforcement about failure to separate recyclables, which means it's based on an analysis of what's out at the curb. We also know from 20 years of enforcing about recycling violations that the bigger buildings are often the offenders on this, and certainly we plan to target our work in the highest density parts of the city.
And what can be done, what can DSNY do to assist communities who have complained that their building does not allow them to comply with organic recycling requirements? Is that the 311 complaint you refer to? Is there another way?
A 311 complaint would be the right thing to do, because then we can go and issue now warnings and later summonses based on that.
Is there an email?
This is always sort of the issue, right? Is the law is clear that if a building has 4 or more units, the building management must provide a place for the separation of material. That's in the law that you all passed. But DSNY does not have the ability to go inside private property, right? Like, we can't bang on the door and, hey, I got to come in and see your trash room and do an inspection, right? It's not something that we're able to do. And so our enforcement is based on what's out at the curb.
would DSNY, I mean, DSNY can go to, I understand that that's a legal limitation, but DSNY can go inside businesses. Is that an authority that DSNY would like to be able to have access private buildings?
Issue, and I don't know if the First Deputy Commissioner knows whether it's an issue of legal authority or an issue of staff capacity, but it's something that has not been part of our policy to be able to go in and inspect trash rooms inside buildings.
Because I think that's a huge, missed opportunity for increasing compliance.
I believe it's more of a staff capacity issue. It's very time intensive and it requires us to gain access to the building, so that's part of the challenge we have with it, but it is something that we would look to focus on.
Are there inspections being done currently for recycling compliance, for instance, in buildings?
Only at the curb, not inside.
I think this is a huge missed opportunity on city. I mean, that was, I guess, news to me, but it's a huge missed opportunity, I believe. I think that explains why a lot of buildings are not complying. So, all right, we'll get back to that. My last question, well, actually, the two last questions, and I believe that you will confirm this. We've heard reports that DSNY has run out of free brown bins and that folks in affected boroughs are being told to purchase their own bin and put a DSNY sticker on it. Can you confirm if this is true?
No, it's not an issue of having run out. It's that every borough, when service came on, had a set period of time where you could get a free bin. That period is now passed, right? So in Brooklyn, it was 3 months. In Queens, it was 3 months. For the Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island, it was 3 months. They were different as the tranches came on, but it was always a 3-month period. And that window had closed October 28th. And now, if you need a new one, you didn't get one in time, you just need an additional one, maybe you want a second one, which is great, you can go and purchase one at bins.nyc or use your own bin at 55
So what is the city doing with its current brown bin?
We tried to be judicious with our budgeting and not over-purchase a tremendous amount. We have a small number left, which would be used for maybe schools or for giveaway events with council members, but the order window was a set period of time. It was always announced to be a set period of time from when it went open in the 3 boroughs that just came online at the end of July. It was said it'll be till the end of October. And by the way, for what it's worth, I mean, as the commissioner mentioned in her testimony, the Staten Island number, which was the most recent tranche, was like double what we had in Brooklyn and Queens. So the demand for this program is clearly there and is very gratifying to see. And if council members are interested in distributing free bins, it's something we always want to work on.
I mean, I want constituents to be able to still order them and get them free from the department before you even gave them to council members. It seems a little arbitrary for there have been a set deadline and you still have more. And why can't you just do another free giveaway?
There's a small number available. It would not, I mean, we could do a couple hundred or a couple thousand as a first come, first serve, but considering that Staten Islanders alone requested 60,000 and received them, I don't think that would be a meaningful program.
So how small are we talking?
Do you know how many we have left? Yeah, it's a few thousand, and we would use them institutionally. Like, we need some, right? So we would use them institutionally. If you want to work out something to do limited giveaway events, and if you want to discuss opportunities to open that again in the future, certainly.
The mayor should pay for your bins.
These bins are available for a very reasonable price. If everybody had the chance to get a free one, everybody in the entire city who requested a free one did receive one. And if you need another one, they're available for purchase.
And my last question. There may be times when temperatures drop below freezing on the night prior to collection, and organic waste that is set out freezes and sticks to itself in the brown bin. Does DSNY have a protocol in place that sanitation workers can follow when this happens?
I can take that. We really don't encounter much of that. A lot of the sanitation workers would just pull out the bags whenever they can, but they can report that to the 311 to their local districts if they find a specific problem. But generally, we don't have that kind of problem.
Thank you for your question.
We have a full room right now of many who are here to testify from the bids, and it's just been alerted to me again after hearing the testimony. Smaller bids are stating that they will have to stop sidewalk sweeping and the replacing of liners of full public trash receptacles if DSNY's rules and SBS does not grant them finances in time. to meet your deadline. If the rules don't allow for compliance and there is no financial support, this will just result in dirtier streets. Can you ensure that this will not happen? And will you stay to listen to their testimonies to craft better rules so that they have clearer answers for compliance?
Senior DSNY staff and legal counsel will be here until everyone has testified. I, again, have committed multiple times, as did the commissioner, that we will meet with, hear from the bids, and that we believe that a lot of these concerns are warranted and a lot of these concerns are based on misunderstandings of the policy. We look forward to clarifying that with everyone.
Lastly, in Long Island City, we have very, very large apartment buildings, like usually 68 to 72 stories with thousands of people living in them. And every time there's Monday pickup, the trash fills up the whole entire block. So I don't know how many containers they could possibly purchase to meet these requirements. So I don't know what we're gonna do.
Street trash collected by the bids is what you're referring to?
No, not from the bids, but separately for residents.
Right, remember the large buildings don't
the
use
residents.
these. They'll be getting the Empire bins from the Container contract, right? The
Okay.
4 cubic yard on-street containers. These are for buildings with 1 to 9 units.
Okay, because we just have massive, massive buildings, and I have not seen any of the Empire bids in my
Right, because they're
district.
beginning in spring 2025 in
Okay.
Community Board 9.
And then me next.
Well, any expansion will require the passage of Councilmember Hudson's bill.
Okay, got it. Okay, we better pass that bill. Okay, that's it. I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you to the admin for testifying. This panel is hereby excused.
Thank you.
I now open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a formal government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant at Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. You may please keep it down. Thank you. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant at Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak on today's hearing topic: containerization of refuse and organic waste. If you have written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant at Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. I am now calling up the first panel: Laura Rothrock, Corey Kunz, Dirk McCall, and Tiara Mack.
Should I start? Thank you, Laura. You may begin when ready. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairs Abreu, Juan, and members of the Committee on Sanitation and Contracts. My name is Laura Rothrock, and I'm here today on behalf of the NYC Bid Association, where I'm co-chair of the Sanitation Working Group. I also serve as the executive director of the Long Island City Partnership. The Bid Association represents 76 bids citywide, many of whom are here to testify. We appreciate you holding this hearing on waste containerization, which is a key issue to our operations. I'm going to go a little bit off script based on some of the testimony from the Department of Sanitation. I have been a civic leader working on this issue for the past year, and any misunderstanding is the result of DSNY not giving us clarification on some of these rules. So I appreciate Councilmember Juan and Councilmember Abreu for bringing this to a public forum today where we can finally get some answers. Bids have helped fill sanitation gaps in underserved areas, including bagging and relining overflowing corner baskets that DSNY couldn't empty fast enough. Bids collect or replace 10,000 trash bags daily, and those don't all fit in a wheelie bin. So while some larger bids can haul them to sanitation warehouses, like the commissioner mentioned, Times Square Alliance and Downtown Alliance that have budgets of $20 million annually, some bids have under $100,000 annually in their budgets. And so most bids leave bags on the sidewalk for DSNY for pickup. Some bids have joined the Clean Curbs program, but expanding containerization for all public trash would be prohibitively expensive. And it's not just about the cost, it also is about DOT and citing these in the curb. Many bids have applied for the Clean Curbs program to buy these containers, and DOT has rejected all of the locations that bids have applied for. So we simply can't comply with this without partnership from DSNY, and we have continually tried to meet with them, and they have committed to meeting with us, but we have yet to have any of those meetings. So we remain committed in partnering with DSNY, but we urge clarity, flexibility, and support to make this mandate feasible for all bids. Thank you.
Sorry. Just keep your excitement to a wave if you can. I understand there's a lot of similarly minded individuals in here today. Next up, we have. You can just go in the order from right to left and say your name when you speak.
Good afternoon. I'm Corey Coons, the Senior Vice President of Operations for the Hudson Square Business Improvement District. Since 2009, we've overseen the transformation of Manhattan's former printing district into a thriving creative hub. The area we manage is generally bounded by Clarkson Street in the north, 6th Avenue in the east, Canal Street in the south, and West Street in the west. I'm here today to comment on the new containerization requirements in New York City. Legislation being discussed today increases the penalties for failure to store waste in the required receptacles and at mandated times on the streets or sidewalks prior to collection by DSNY. While we understand and support the public policy to get bags off the street and have actively participated in the Clean Curbs program to reduce bags in our district, we are concerned with how containerization efforts will impact bids. Over the last 2 years, DSNY has expressed to us and our colleagues that organizations like ours will no longer be able to bag public garbage and leave it on the street for DSNY to collect. Instead, we will be expected to cart garbage to a DSNY garage or purchase enough containers throughout the neighborhood to store bags awaiting pickup by DSNY. This approach would be a huge financial and operation burden for HS Bid and all bids across the city. Unlike other bids that focus mostly on sanitation and security, we were founded to implement streetscape improvements to make Hudson Square a place that prioritizes people over vehicles. We started supplemental sanitation services in the fall of 2020 because of service reductions at DSNY during the COVID-19 pandemic to keep our district attractive and welcoming as we were trying to lure office workers and visitors back to the neighborhood. In the case of our bid, we are concerned these financial penalties and exorbitant costs to comply with this new mandate could force us to cease providing supplemental sanitation services entirely, which would result in the overflowing trash cans and dirtier city sidewalks. The timing of this requirement is particularly concerning as our central business district is finally recovering from the economic decline caused by COVID-19. Pedestrian traffic is currently increasing as we welcome new major office tenants to the district. With more foot traffic also comes more public garbage. While we support and appreciate the important goals of containerization, we look forward to working with the city.
Thank you. Dirk.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to bring testimony. I'd like to thank Chairwoman Juan and for the Contracts Committee and Chair Sean Abreu from the Sanitation Committee. My name is Dirk McCall de Paloma, and I'm the Executive Director of the Sunnyside Shines Business Improvement District in Queens. This is an incredibly important topic, and as you can see, we have a large number of people from the Bid Association because this proposal will affect all the smaller bids across the city. We cover 12 blocks on the north and south sides of Queens Boulevard from 38th Street to 50th Street, and the first 6 blocks of Greenpoint Avenue, the first block of Roosevelt Avenue. Our assessment's a mere $360,000 annually. We're not even one of the smaller bids, but we're not well financed like the Downtown Alliance or Times Square Alliance. The bids that the Sanitation Department rightfully points out can do containerization and have already done so because they have the funds to do it. We contract out our street sanitation work to Street Plus, as we have since our formation in 2008. And our street team are very good at cleaning the sidewalks, making sure the trash cans are emptied. Queens Boulevard has a lot of restaurants. We have to empty these trash cans twice a day. If we're not emptying them, the trash is going to be overflowing. It's going to be everywhere. The large trash cans that they had have been replaced by smaller trash cans that only take up half the trash. So it's already problematic. But we appreciate these goals, but these goals, there's no mechanism to figure out how we're going to pay for it, how we're going to make certain the bids are able to do this. We're not opposed to containerization. We would support this. But siting, you have to figure out where you're going to put these bins. Where are they going to go? Who's going to pay for the bins? The Department of Sanitation used to have the city bin program where you could apply and they would pay you back for buying the first city bin. We tried to do that. We weren't successful in doing that. We need to have a mechanism where we're going to be able to fund citing these additional storage locations, figuring out how we're going to pay for additional staff to transport the trash bags. We have at least 2 trash bags per trash can.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Tiara Mack. I am the Executive Director of the Pitkin Avenue bid in Brownsville, and I am a current city bin user opposed to mandatory containerization for bids in commercial corridors. The Pitkin Avenue bid has an assessment of $225,000. We cover 32 block faces and currently hold 52 litter baskets over 64 corners. The Pitkin Avenue bid has both in-house sanitation and a vendor. In FY24, our in-house vendor and sanitation staff provided 6,200 hours of service, and while the vendor provided 2,100 hours at $32.99 an hour, Pitkin bid did 4,000 hours at $19 an hour. In FY24, our total spent on sanitation was $145,000, with the bid assessment covering $92,000 and grants covering $51,000. And the majority of that is from the small bid grant, which is not baselined or guaranteed year over year. We do 39,000 bags of trash a year. We are able to containerize a third of them. We currently have 13 modules over 3 locations, and they hold 65 50-gallon bags. The bid team containerizes about 3 hours a day, and that's $20,000 a year. Though commercial corridor containerization has many benefits, there are also many limitations, such as illegal dumping, which counteracts the intention of the program. Staff and labor costs, this is a $20,000 initiative. In addition to our street sweeping, pay equity. In-house and vendor staff who receive lower pay are expected to do the jobs of DSNY staff. Maintenance costs. Since our installation, the bid has spent about $7,500 on lock replacement, door repair, and other related expenses. The fight over public space, the community moving units from the curb to the sidewalk will prevent DSNY pickup, and reduced parking is crucial in bids that are further away from train stations and have limited parking spaces or lots, such as on Pitkin Avenue. So while we do believe in containerization, and I've been doing it for 2 years, it is extremely difficult, extremely costly, and there is no additional funds to help us do this. And it's not feasible in our districts because of the limited amount of public space. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this panel is excused. I'm now going to call up the next panel, beginning with James Martin, Noah Sheriff, my apologies if I'm butchering your name, Matt Malley, and Rebecca Poole. All right, you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chairs Abreu and Juan, members of the Committees on Sanitation Contracts. I'm Jim. All right. Good afternoon, Chairs Abreu and Juan, members of the Committees on Sanitation Contracts. I'm Jim Martin, Executive Director of ACE, Association of Community Employment. ACE is a citywide nonprofit that supports New Yorkers who have histories of homelessness, incarceration, and addiction by providing job training, work experience, and a lifetime support network that helps participants achieve economic independence. We are widely known in the council for our work providing supplemental sanitation services to many council districts here in the city, working with over 40 council members across 5 boroughs. We are so deeply grateful for the City Council's continued support of ACE's supplemental sanitation services through the Cleanup Initiative. As you know, this funding not only helps to keep the city clean, but also offers life-changing employment opportunities for our workforce development program participants. We have significant concerns about the planned rollout of containerization, including the DSNY directive that ACE is prohibited from leaving tied-up trash bags adjacent to public garbage receptacles between DSNY pickups. Instead, DSNY will require us and our local bid partners to either identify alternative off-street collection locations or to transport the bag trash to DSNY facilities ourselves. Unlike bids, which are localized, ACE works over 5 boroughs. This will be both operationally and economically infeasible for us, and attempting to comply with this requirement will significantly impact our ability to deliver direct services. For context, last year ACE removed 900,000 bags of garbage from litter receptacles across council districts. Asking our workers to transport or truck these bags multiple blocks or even across the borough is simply impossible. Even if more storage solutions are identified, by complying with this requirement, ACE crews will spend significantly more time moving trash to designated drop-off points and less time providing the services that New Yorkers have come to rely on from us, including street sweeping, graffiti removal, senior snow removal, and sidewalk power washing, in turn negatively impacting the quality of life for hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers. Should the implementation of this policy result in ACE being unable to meet the terms of the Cleanup Initiative funding, we would have no choice but to terminate the employment of over 150 full-time graduates of our workforce development program. These men and women have worked hard in ACE's programs to come barriers through employment. They work very hard. They do so faithfully, serving the city every day. I hope that you will consider those folks when you take the measure under consideration. Thank you.
You got it. Next.
Good afternoon to the chairs and members of the New York City Council Sanitation Committee. My name is Noah Sharoff. I serve as the Executive Director of the Bayside Village Business Improvement District in Northeast Queens. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I would like to provide some insight into what a small bid is. Our situation applies to several bids across the 5 boroughs. The Bayside Village Business Improvement District is a small district covering Bell Boulevard in Northeast Queens from 35th Avenue to Northern Boulevard and 41st Avenue just off of Bell, about 10 blocks of commercial, residential, office, and mixed-use property. Currently, our assessment is $230,000 per year. Of that, approximately $69,000 per year is paid to our contracted supplemental sanitation service provider, Streets Plus. The bid receives grants, but they are not guaranteed year to year and are often, if not always, reimbursement-based. We pay money generally received from the assessment and get that money back. The bid contracts one worker, a rock star named Yao, who works 6 days per week. According to the September monthly snapshot, 175 service hours were clocked and 501 garbage bags were used. Yale currently places the bags next to each receptacle. The new mandate to containerize bags will not just create a greater burden for Yale, but the bid as well. Plain litter pickup services are costing close to 30% of the assessment. Adding additional services like hauling all the bags to a central location or carting to a sanitation garage will further squeeze the budget and make it extraordinarily difficult to run programs. Another matter that I would like to bring to your attention is that the practice of improper disposal does occur from the general public, as was mentioned earlier. And business owners have suffered this, creating situations such as this.
Thank you very much. Let me see it.
Yes, I can submit this as well.
Please submit
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. Next up, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Malloy. I'm a sanitation supervisor for the Garment District Alliance, a business improvement district in Midtown Manhattan. The Garment District Alliance supports containerized garbage. However, there are aspects of Intro 57 to which we strenuously object, and we argue to you, and we urge you to not support this bill. The Garment District is a nonprofit 501c3 that provides supplemental neighborhood sanitation services to the city's existing municipal DSNY service. It is clearly stated in our agreement with the city that the city cannot reduce service in a bid district, unless the service is also being reduced citywide. In other words, a bid cannot be penalized for assisting the city with their obligation to clean the streets and remove publicly generated waste from public trash receptacles. The city is required to provide public waste receptacles on our streets, not bids. The garment district will not privately pay for standard NYC containers required by DSNY. A bid may opt at their own cost to provide non-standard waste receptacles, but we cannot pay for city property or face penalties for not providing them. Similarly, the garment district should not be forced to undertake responsibility for mapping locations of proposed containers. These are city streets, and DSNY must step up and manage them, including the siting of waste receptacles. The garment district also strenuously objects to the proposal that we could be fined for leaving bags of garbage on the corners for DSNY collection. The contents of the bags that the GDA places on the corners are publicly generated street litter that GDA sweeps up to improve our neighborhoods. Bids.
Make sure to submit your testimony.
Can I continue a paragraph?
Yeah, you may continue one paragraph.
Bids are voluntarily formed organizations which help the neighborhoods have clean and well-maintained environments in cooperation with and supplement to government agencies. They are not formed as the bill intends to replace or take on responsibility of government. This bill violates an agreement with the city and undermines the goodwill between public and private sector. We recommend the council send this bill back to DSNY to work with the community groups to develop a better containerization plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairs Abreu and Juan, for holding this important hearing about waste containerization. We appreciate the opportunity to submit testimony. The Council of New York Cooperatives and Condominiums is a membership organization that provides advocacy, information, and education for housing cooperatives and condominiums throughout New York City. Over 170,000 New York families make their homes in CNYC member buildings. We applaud the City Council's determination to improve the quality of life for New Yorkers through containerization. However, many of our member buildings will be significantly negatively impacted by Intro 2744 and Intro 949, and our smaller member buildings have already been negatively affected by the implementation of containerization. Their issues will not be addressed by Intro 2775. Many do not have room for the regulated bins. Several have received confirmation that the new bins are blocking fire exits. Waivers are not easily accessible. Medium and large-sized cooperatives and condominiums will also face granular issues with the location, installation, and use of permanent garbage structures. We respectively request that Intro 2775 and Intro 2744 be amended to require outreach and the formation of working groups that include co-op and condo homeowners in order to provide feedback. Most importantly, we ask you to reject the apparent inequity that exists between Intro 2775 and Intro 2744. Like single-family homeowners, cooperative shareholders and condominium unit owners are homeowners who pay real estate taxes for services. We respectfully request that they be accorded the same rights and privileges as all other homeowners under the city's administrative code. The cost of installing and maintaining the permanent bins to improve the quality of life for all New Yorkers should come from the city's general fund and not be paid for by co-op and condo homeowners. Lastly, we are opposed to Intro 949. Logistically, it is uncertain where dumpsters of the specified size should be placed, and given the dumpsters would reduce visibility, it would impede public safety. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. This panel is now excused. Mark Disses, Jeffrey LaFrancois, Scott Hobbs, and Matt Joswiak.
Hi. Good morning, Chairs Abreu, members of the committee. My name is Scott Hobbs, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Village Alliance. Since 1993, we have supported Greenwich Village's commercial corridors, which are home to predominantly small and independent businesses. We share the Department of Sanitation's goal of removing trash bags from the street. For over 30 years, we provided supplemental sanitation services in corridors underserved by city sanitation. However, DSNY's proposal to mandate waste containerization for public refuse bagged by the bid for DSNY pickup is an operational and financial challenge that is insurmountable for small bids like mine. First, implementing containerization requires collaboration with DSNY, DOT, and the bids. In 2022, despite receiving a DSNY grant for containerization, we were unable to place them due to disagreements between these agencies on placement. Second, 70% of our $1.4 million budget is already allocated to sanitation and public safety. We cannot fund containerization infrastructure without significant cuts to these services. Unlike larger bids, we lack the resources to absorb the additional costs. Moreover, enforcement of this unfunded mandate would reduce and eliminate our supplementary sanitation services, leading to overflowing bins and undermining the goal of cleaner streets. Bids were established to supplement these city services, not replace them. Shifting core responsibilities without financial support contradicts this intent. To address these issues, we urge the city to provide financial assistance for containerization infrastructure, collaborate with bids to identify feasible solutions for container placement, and postpone enforcement until it's practically feasible. The Village Alliance remains committed with working with the city and stands ready to partner with DSNY. However, we need equitable, realistic solutions to account for the unique challenges of smaller bids like ours. Thank you.
Jeff. Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, I'm Jeffrey LaFrancois, the Executive Director of the Meatpacking District Management Association. We're a bid charged with maintaining the city's premier cultural district for 50,000 plus daily visitors, workers, and residents on the west side. And central to our mission is the management of public refuse, which our hardworking sanitation staff sets out for DSNY collection. As a bid, we supplement the city's core services, improving what the city cannot otherwise address. Well-maintained waste management is central to our ability to host significant public programming while supporting a thriving retail and hospitality corridor. DSNY mentioned that bids pile bags of trash next to our receptacles, indicating it's unsightly, and I agree. But I ask you to look across the street from where a bid boundary ends and where the other side of services picks up. You'll see overflowing trash cans and streets coated in litter. The bid believes trash containerization is a positive next step in New York's streetscape revolution, but we've not been a welcome at the planning table, nor has DSNY attempted to understand our operations, contracts, and budgeting processes. And so we oppose DSNY's current proposal to mandate trash containerization for bid-collected public refuse. The proposal ignores long-standing partnerships, would reduce core city services, and violate contracts and procurement policies. The mandate will place an undue burden on bids by requiring complex applications and significant siting review processes. Notably, DSNY did not have accurate numbers for the city's expenses for this program, but it seems they had a clear understanding of what it would cost bids, and given their lack of engagement, I find that quite surprising. Beyond complicated DOT rules, in the Meatpacking District, we're also uncertain about whether container placement and design would require approval through lengthy landmarks review process. A good first step would be for DSNY to effectively demonstrate and pilot public containerization, managing this transition by identifying container locations and viable products. The cleaning services that bids provide are supplemental to DSNY's core function. Trash collected comes from not a household or commercial operator, but from the people of New York and visitors walking our streets. If DSNY wishes to implement this policy, they should recognize the partners that help them keep the city clean and also be responsible for seeing it through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up.
Good afternoon, Chairs Abreu, Juan, and members of the Committee on Sanitation and Contracts. My name is Mark Dykes, and I'm the Vice President of Operations and Planning at the Fifth Avenue Association. The association manages Fifth Avenue from 61st Street to 46th Street and 57th from 6th to Madison, providing supplemental sanitation, security, maintenance, marketing services that benefit Fifth Avenue. Thank you for holding this hearing today. As you've heard from my bid colleagues, we all share the city's goals of getting bags of garbage off the street. Commissioner Tiss herself testified that these look terrible. I think we're all in agreement there. What we disagree on is how we get to the solution. We're concerned about how these containerization efforts are being implemented by DSNY and how they will impact nonprofit organizations that manage bids across the city. Moving to containerization is a big change. It will require siting these containers in the public space, in parking spaces, curb extensions, and possibly on sidewalks. To plan for this change and this investment that bids will need to make, or not make, or the city will make, we need to know what the process is. We are required to implement this change by August of 2025. That is less than 9 months, that is approximately 9 months from now when we do not have even proposed rules to be able to implement these changes. Containerization will also require coordination with DSNY to determine how garbage will be collected. In our district, along Fifth Avenue in Midtown, DSNY comes down Fifth Avenue to pick up our garbage. We can't site containers on Fifth Avenue because all 4 of our lanes of traffic are filled with traffic. Parking regulations don't allow that. We will have to site our containers on cross streets, which DSNY does not drive down. So how are we going to do that? Lastly, I think you've heard from a lot of our colleagues about the willingness to participate in being good partners. We are willing to voluntarily decide to containerize public litter basket waste, but we oppose requiring bids to haul or containerize public litter basket waste as it improperly shifts essential city services from the City of New York to private not-for-profits.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Joswiak. I'm the CEO and founder of Rethink Food. I want to thank the council for hosting this today, and also the administration for making, what I agree with, a lot of progress in the past couple of years around sanitation, sustainability, and the issues that we talk about. Our interests here are slightly different. We're really focused on waste management for institutional food. We believe that there's an excessive food waste problem within our city shelters and any procured food across the city. And we believe that the containerization and separating organic materials will lead to shining a light on the excess and waste that is in the institutional food system, and will lead to a reduction which will ultimately save the taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. So I just want to once again thank everybody for hosting this, and happy holidays.
Thank you. This panel is excused. We're now moving on to Christine Datz Romero, Bonnie Weber, David Goldberg, and Sarah Pinnenberg. Is Bonnie Weber here?
Bonnie left.
Thank you. You may begin.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, and my name is Christina Datz Romero, co-founder and executive director of the Lower East Side Ecology Center, and also a member of the Save Our Campus Coalition. And unsurprisingly, today I'm going to talk about compost. So it's a change of pace, but it was very interesting to hear the discussion about containerization. I'm here in support of Intro 698, which clarifies basically the definition of organic waste drop-off sites. This is an historic bill. It was Local Law 89 that established that DSNY establish and operate no less than 30 organic drop-off waste sites citywide, and a minimum of 3 sites in every borough. I was really shocked how Commissioner Tisch's opposition to this law was framed, because she basically said in so many words that we would be taking out smart bins. There are over 300 smart bins in the city. And this is not aiming, this bill doesn't aim to take out smart bins. It rather really
reaffirms a commitment to community-based composting. My organization started a drop-off 30 years ago at Union Square, where we collect organic food waste or food waste from people, and it's part of a cornerstone of the community composting movement here in the city, and it is important that we make this distinction because drop-offs like those are not, a smart bin is not a substitute for drop-offs like those, and we would like to continue them because it really is part of our system of collecting, well, I didn't get very far, of collecting food scraps and then turning them into compost on a local level. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Good morning. I'm David Goldberg, a principal with Street Plus Company. We have been providing supplemental sanitation services to BIDS since 1991. We applaud the effort to try and containerize garbage towards a cleaner city. However, it's important to understand that BIDS, and especially smaller BIDS, will need more financial resources to execute containerization successfully. I'm afraid that our clean ambassadors will be spending an inordinate amount of time moving bags into containers and less time cleaning our vibrant commercial districts. Our teams presently sweep the sidewalks, curb lines, and empty and reline the trash receptacle. All bags are placed adjacent to the trash receptacles, providing an efficient way for the DSNY teams to go through a district quickly, cutting down on idling on our congested streets. Many BIDS have asked me, how many containers will I need and how much will it cost? It's an important question with varied answers. How frequently will DSNY empty the containers? How accurate are the DSNY schedules and pickups? Will a city budget deficit or financial issue reduce pickups, resulting in the need for more containers if the pickups are reduced? BIDS will also need to pay the vendors like myself to power wash, maintain, and clean these containers. It's also important to understand how garbage finds its way into the corner trash receptacles and garbage bags. It's not only coffee cups and food wrappers that end up in our corner receptacles, but garbage that is improper disposal, legal dumping, legal and illegal vendors, as well as businesses without private carters, as well as residents who use these trash receptacles for their own garbage. If we move forward with containerization, we must simultaneously confront the aforementioned violators to reduce trash on our city streets and sidewalks. Moreover, our teams routinely need to clean mounds of garbage from the unhoused population that strewn our streets all day. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, nice to see you. Good to see you too. Thank you to the chair, people here, and to the committee. My name is Sarah Pennenberg. I'm a political coordinator here at SEIU. We represent 175,000 members across 11 states, Washington, D.C., and New York. We have 90,000 members that work in the city, and they are part of the essential property service sector of New York. One of the cornerstones of our union is the residential division, which represents workers in apartment buildings in New York City, providing essential servicing like cleaning, including trash removal. Many of our members work in buildings that would fall under the guidelines of Intro 2744, and this bill, if it moved forward, we want to make sure that it has safety for these residential workers. The city's goal to reducing the rat population is one that we fully support, and we know this impact, and our members know this impact to their safety. Rats pose significant health threats and safety risks, particularly to these workers who are tasked to maintain building sanitation and waste disposal. In its current form, however, the bill lacks adequate safeguards for the workers who personal safety and work conditions will be significantly impacted by this proposed reforms. We see several opportunities to improve these safety guards for residential workers. These include requiring employees to provide proper training and protective equipment to take necessary precautions to protect these workers and ensure any potential hazards. We also believe that this pilot program will provide invaluable information and policy efforts here. So
we want to make sure that we are working with Department of Sanitation through the rulemaking process to make sure that our members' voices are heard, and we urge the city to ensure a robust safeguard for residential workers' safety as they continue to develop and implement this important policy. We are eager to work with the council and make sure that this is done through the rulemaking process. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much, and we love 32BJ, we love your members, and certainly want them to be part of this process. Especially since y'all the one doing the work. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sean.
Our next panel will be Wendy Brower, Samantha McBride, Magdamari Marsano, and Nikki Cross from NYLPI.
Thank you. You may begin when ready.
Okay. Good day. My name is Samantha McBride. I'm a faculty member at Baruch College, where I teach environmental policy and program evaluation. I recently hosted a conference on New York City organic waste policy at Baruch, bringing together diverse stakeholders, including 32BJ SEIU. And I serve as an advisor to Earth Matter, a grassroots compost organization on Governor's Island. I don't represent any company, product, or consultancy. I support Intro 498 with caveats. Community gardens must be credited for the organics they collect, with DSNY maintaining separate, accurate records. DSNY must also ensure clean materials from these gardens are composted locally, not sent to co-digestion with sewage solids, and provide services without restricting gardens' operations, land tenure, or freedom of speech. I support Intro 698. Smart bins are useful but cannot replace the community and job development benefits of local composting drop-off sites. There is also a problem with how DSNY reports the quantity of organics coming in through smart bins. We need to know how much smart bins are bringing in every month on every route, and there are simple methods to estimate this that DSNY can easily institute. I also support Intro 781 with caveats. Compostable bags and liners reduce the yuck factor and encourage participation in organics collection. The city should encourage their use instead of traditional plastic bags, which contribute to microplastics in compost and soil. In closing, I urge the council to hold DSNY accountable for improving organics policy. The current top-down approach with low participation and poor curbside capture rates cannot succeed alongside planned enforcement in 2025. DSNY must prioritize local, community-based solutions, scale up neighborhood engagement, and rebuild trust to create a system that works for all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Magdamari Marcano, and I'm a resident of the Bronx, Council District 15, and I've been there for 56 years. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I have 3 points that I wanted to bring up. One of them is the validity of the sole source RFP the Department of Sanitation has used to force homeowners to purchase the trash receptacles that will be used to combat the rat situation in all communities. I did some research on the companies selected to provide those trash cans. The perspective of the homeowners on my block is that a contract of this magnitude should have been diversified. We homeowners would appreciate to be respected as you do businesses and other entities throughout the city. Secondly, where are the jobs for New Yorkers, since the company selected to furnish those trash cans is located in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the owners of that company are Canadian and Bahamian, not
United States. The second item is the New York City Department of Sanitation has advised us about the police report. I know they answered that question if a can is stolen while sitting outside of my property. Our NYPD does not currently have adequate manpower to address those more serious crimes. How do you expect them to take homeowners seriously about a trash can? Did the Department of Sanitation sit with NYPD as a partner and alert them of the additional duties they are expected to assume? That I say because I've been victimized with a stolen can. I am not opposed to containerization to combat the rat epidemic in New York because I've always used the can. And sanitation was the one that refused to pick up my garbage in a can. Okay? On the contrary, I'm not opposed, okay, I'm an avid fan of it, but the focus should have been on food sources, restaurants, food establishment, the corner trash cans, and large buildings that throw their cardboard packaging and compacted food bags on sidewalks of our streets. I love the idea of composting, but literally I live next door to the largest compost bin in the Bronx, a McDonald's trash dumpster. Why isn't sanitation addressing those types of violators? Are we afraid they would leave? If large fast food establishments were to leave the Bronx, we would be a lot healthier for it and New York City a lot cleaner. Homeowners with less than 9 units are disappearing due to the building explosion that is taking place in the Bronx. Yet New York City continues to suck the money and life out of us all, especially the poorest community districts of the entire country. New York City Department of Sanitation and the mayor's office made itself responsible for the rat epidemic when they replaced the metal trash cans back in 1970 with plastic bags. I firmly believe that those responsible for the problem pay for the solution. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Nikki Cross, and I'm a staff attorney in NILPI's New York Lawyers for the Public Interest Environmental Justice Program. Thank you to the committee for the opportunity to testify and for continuing to advance programs and legislation that will help New Yorkers reduce the millions of tons of waste we unnecessarily dispose in landfills and incinerators each year. It's more critical than ever that municipal and state government take aggressive steps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, protect public health and environmental justice communities, protect worker and public safety, and create good local green jobs in composting, reuse, and recycling. We strongly support Intro 284 and Intro 781, which together would ensure that all city agencies, CUNY facilities, and SUNY facilities manage organic waste as a recyclable material. This is critical to reduce the large amounts of waste generated and disposed by public agencies and universities, and to ensure that millions of New Yorkers who work and interact with these agencies can abide by a single, simple set of recycling rules at work and at school. We similarly support Intro 498, which would enable more New Yorkers to recycle organic material at community gardens. In parallel with these public sector programs, it is urgent that we implement and enforce robust organic waste recycling and food donation programs and rules across our huge commercial sector so that New Yorkers can be assured that this material is being donated or composted wherever they work, eat, shop, or recreate. Today is the 5th anniversary of the signing of the landmark Commercial Waste Zones Law, which remains our best opportunity to simultaneously reduce disposed commercial waste, eliminate millions of unnecessary truck miles, improve worker safety, and reduce pollution in environmental justice communities overburdened by private transfer stations and truck yards. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Next panel is Tim Laughlin, Maddie Baker, and Christopher Leon Johnson.
Go.
We usually do it in this order.
All right, no problem.
Yeah.
Chair Abreu, Chair Wan, thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Tim Laughlin. I am president of the Oversight Partnership. I am also the co-chair of the New York City Bid Association Sanitation Working Group. I think I'll be the first to congratulate Commissioner Tisch on her appointment to the New York City Police Department. On behalf of all bids, we look forward to working with her to keep our city and our neighborhoods safe and clean. I think that also provides a unique opportunity for new leadership at the Department of Sanitation that can collaborate specifically with business improvement districts and nonprofit providers like ACE, more importantly funded by the City Council, to have additional service within our community. A lot of conversation at this hearing about consultation and engagement. I have been working for over 2 years with the mayor, the senior advisors, the deputy mayor, and multiple agency commissioners on truly coming up with what our plan is for next steps. To date, the bids have not really had that opportunity for consultation. We are open to it, and we are open to containerization, but just making sure that we can really talk about the specifics. Again, this is the public's trash that we manage, and it's really important that we understand that many small bids will cease operations related to supplemental sanitation services if we can't come up with a policy that they can afford. We're not talking about the biggest bids in the city, let alone in the country. We're talking about some of the smallest organizations that really do that neighborhood work in the outer boroughs, some of which only have budgets annually of $80,000. I appreciate your leadership on this issue, and we look forward to collaborating both with you, city government, and the Department of Sanitation on possible and positive next steps. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all for this opportunity to testify. My name is Maddie Baker, and I work in operations for the Bryant Park Corporation and 34th Street Partnership Business Improvement Districts. I want to recognize many of the great points brought up by my bid peers, especially those who represent smaller bids who are disproportionately impacted by this enforcement. We have been working closely with members of DSNY to get our bins cited, and we look forward to getting our bags off of the ground. That being said, there's a significant cost to this implementation and an additional tax on our sanitation employees who will have to travel further distances with these bags, which has not been considered by DSNY. We are interested in getting our bags off the ground with longevity in mind. As Commissioner Tisch said earlier, this is an investment that could last for 10 years. Again, that being said, there has been no assurance that we will be able to use these bins for longer than 1 to 3 years, according to DSNY's imposed contract, which is not a sufficient amount of time for this investment to be worthwhile. At today's hearing, DSNY said these contracts were negotiable. We have made attempts to negotiate this contract with DSNY but have been stonewalled. We request a formal meeting with DSNY and DOT together to formally address the longevity of our potential investment in containers. Thank you. Thank you. Christopher?
Yeah, hello. My name is Christopher Leon Johnson. Thank you, Chair Wan, Chair Brady, for hosting this hearing. I want to give my congratulations to the new NYPD Commissioner, Jessica Tisch, who was the recently former Commissioner of Sanitation. I know she'll do a great job as Commissioner, especially with her inventions of the mandated bins that we will have to use now in the buildings. So I want to make this clear that I agree with Intro 57 with the bins, but the problem is that it should be where anybody could buy any bin they want. I want to know why you have to buy a certain bin from a certain vendor to be in compliance. What happens if you don't want to buy those bins and you want to buy a better bin that could do a way better job than the bins that the city has made everybody buy? Will you be out of compliance with that? Because that's the bad area, is where you buy a better bin and you put it outside, and now the DSNY could easily fine you money for having the wrong bin, even as a better bin. So let's keep this 100%. These BIDs are correct about this, right? It's going to hurt them. The small BIDs going to hurt the small BIDs, and the city, instead of just making people buy bins, why don't you just give these BIDs the money to implement services like community sanitation services and community cleanups more, instead of just making people buy bins. Bins is not going to solve anything at all. It's not going to solve it, because the population is too big. It's a big population, and everybody is going. You walk out, 8 o'clock at nighttime, and people still out, and especially the high congested areas, in the CBD areas, on the 60th Street, and they see the business, they go open up and put trash inside there, and it's going to fill up. So it's not going to do anything at all. unless you mandate locks on the bins when you dispose them, it's not going to do anything. You let it out on the open. That's what I gotta say. But thank you.
Thank you for your time. This panel is excused.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to remote testimony on Zoom. The first individual to testify, it will be Mary Arnold. Mary, you have 2 minutes. You may begin when ready.
Okay, apologize, it's not doing my video. I'm testifying on behalf of the Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and Bronx swabs. This is firstly testimony on Intro 498, collecting organics from community gardens. DSNY should not be in competition for organics with local compost processing sites such as botanical gardens. Instead, a system should be created to prioritize local compost processing and to recognize and rebalance excess compostables and send them to community compost processing sites, those that have been funded and those that are being established or expanded that have excess capacity. For example, Queens Botanical Garden has the capacity to process an additional ton of organics per week. It should be further modified to expand the funding for local composting infrastructure throughout all 5 boroughs, working toward the ultimate goal of achieving 100% composting of food scraps throughout New York City. Currently, diversion rates for organics, source separation from other municipal solid waste is hovering around 4%. There is time for infrastructure to be built out as participation increases through a program of focused education paired with enforcement that is targeted to increase participation. Testimony on Intro 698, clarifying the definition of the organic waste drop-off site. We generally support this. However, we would like to see standalone receptacles that are used for food scrap drop-off sites, whether staffed or unstaffed, be allowed when they are managed by a community or nonprofit to count toward the minimum number of drop-off sites. We recognize that staff drop-off sites provide educational opportunities, however, they can be costly. Community or nonprofit managed sites should be permitted to establish drop-off locations.
Thank you very
Your
much.
time has expired.
We're now moving to Ashira Schwartz.
You may begin.
Ashira has dropped off. We're now moving over to Letitia Peters.
You may begin.
Oh, hi. I'm Letitia Peters, and I'm here on behalf of BK Rot, which is a fossil fuel-free food waste hauling and composting service. It's community-supported, bike-powered. And a little bit about me. I'm Gen Z, fairly new to the Brooklyn community, and I'm from Long Island, and also very deeply disturbed by the changes in climate, from rising sea levels to catastrophic natural disasters and so much more. And I'm here to talk about my opposition, or the BK Rot's opposition to Law 57, and in support of 498, 698, and 284. And in terms of the opposition for 57, BK Rot believes that punishing people financially would be misaligned and would cause more harm to the low-income communities that we serve. So we urge the committee to reassess options that
would encourage education or even connecting with other organizations such as yourself or community gardens to promote more education about environmentalism and also sanitation laws. And specifically for 284, we are in support of CUNYs and SUNYs having composting programs, and we also urge the committee to collaborate more with the youth and youth-led organizations. And
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We'll now move over to Lonnie Portis.
You may begin.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Chair Brayu and Chair Wan. Thanks for the opportunity to testify today. I'm Lonnie Portis, the New York City Policy Manager at We Act for Environmental Justice. We Act is a member of the Save Our Compost New York City Coalition, coalition of New York City organizations working to support legislation that protects, strengthens, and expands community composting across the city while uplifting environmental and climate justice. I just want to say, although We Act supports containerization, I want to remind DSNY and the council that our goal needs to be waste diversion and refuse reduction, not just aesthetic and cleanliness. 41% of New York City's refuse consists of organics. On average, this amounts to about 1.1 million landfills and incinerators annually. These landfills and incinerators are sited near low-income and communities of color outside of New York City, and with that comes a host of environmental health and climate issues. As we scale up containerization across the city, we must do it thoughtfully, prioritizing and incentivizing waste separation. Currently, we are concerned that the city is going down a path where New Yorkers are not going to separate their waste and just toss everything into one bin, which is counterintuitive to the city's zero waste goals. We recognize the complexity of running and maintaining a waste system of this size. However, we feel any one-size-fits-all approach will not work, and that different communities within the city require different, sometimes unique solution due to the lack of physical infrastructure for waste. Containerization is just a piece of a much larger waste system, and the city should take the opportunity to build a system and infrastructure that is grounded in environmental and climate justice. I can't see how much time I have left, but I'll quickly close with my testimony by voicing We Act support for Intro 498 and 698. Intro 498 requires the Department of Sanitation to collect waste from community gardens. This bill allows community gardens to increase their collection capacity and not turn away material that could end up in the trash. Although not addressed in this bill, there is concern that the organic waste collected by DSNY will not be turned into compost for soil amendments, but instead sent to co-digestion facilities. Intro 698 clarifies the organic waste drop-off sites for the purpose of complying with local law 89.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
I will go ahead and conclude. I'll submit detailed written testimony.
Thank you, Lonnie. Next, we have Alia.
You may begin.
Alia, are you on?
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
Good afternoon. My name is Alia Sumro, and I'm the Deputy Director for New York City Policy at the New York League of Conservation Voters. Thank you, Chairs Abreu and Wan, and members of the Committees on Sanitation and Contracts for the opportunity to testify today. NYLCV has supported moving the city towards waste containerization and is excited to see DSNY's proposed rules for a pilot program in Manhattan Community 9, especially since similar programs have been long established in global cities such as Barcelona, Paris, Amsterdam. Waste containerization is important not only from a climate and environmental justice perspective, but also for improving New York City residents' quality of life. Containerization will reduce litter on the ground, the mounds of plastic trash bags on our sidewalks, and it will reduce the rat population. Waste containerization also has the potential to revitalize our city's streetscapes and sidewalks for public use. With that said, NYLCV hopes that DSNY can one day move towards a comprehensive containerization program that includes trash, recyclables, and organic waste to increase diversion rates. As the DSNY pilot program progresses, we underscore the need for long-term funding for automated side-loading trucks and containers. In the future, NYLCV hopes the city learns from the pilot program in CB9 to implement and fully fund a permanent citywide waste containerization program. In terms of the legislation being considered today, NYLCV supports Intro 781. We are very happy to see the residential curbside organics program rolling out in all 5 boroughs.
With this bill, city agencies can lead by example by requiring organic waste as recyclable material and help us move closer to our zero waste by 2030 mandate. Similarly, we support the intent of Intro 498, sponsored by Councilmember Abreu, requiring DSNY to collect organic waste from community gardens. Ultimately, we think community gardens organic waste should become part of the residential organics pickup. And then just to close out, we support the intent of the two pre-considered bills, 2744 and 2746. Ultimately, we want to invest and improve our streetscapes, and waste containerization is the way to go.
Thank you,
for the opportunity to speak.
No, thank you for testifying. Anna Sachs.
You may begin.
Hi, the Solid Waste Advisory Boards of Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx oppose Intro 57, which would allow the Department of Sanitation to issue fines up to $3,500 to large buildings that fail to store waste in a, quote, satisfactory manner or place their waste on the sidewalk before the designated set-out time. We believe that DSNY has a limited amount of enforcement capital before New Yorkers become fed up. We would like DSNY to use this enforcement capital on issues of substance rather than aesthetics. DSNY should reserve hefty fines for buildings that illegally dispose of hazardous waste and electronics rather than buildings that put out waste at 7 p.m. instead of 8 p.m. Further, we would like to see DSNY and New Yorkers take separating out organics and recyclables seriously, which will help move our city's diversion rate from 19% to its potential 75% based on the last waste characterization study. We strongly believe that DSNY should reserve its finding power for efforts that help divert waste from landfills and incinerators. We strongly support the intent of Resolution 284 to establish organics collection and composting programs at institutions that are part of the State University of New York system and the City University of New York system. However, we do not endorse the resolution as introduced, and we do not endorse Senate Bill 5713 because it includes sending organics to, quote, waste to energy, aka incineration facilities. The City Council resolution should include a strong recommendation that the Senate bill be modified to exclude sending organics to, quote, waste to energy and instead prioritize composting. The Solid Waste Advisory Board strongly discourage the enactment of Intro 949, which would manage and source separation goals. Instead, we need to decrease the building solid waste and increase the source separation of organic to recyclables. To improve source separation, we need DSNY to conduct sustained public education and to maintain enforcement of a building separation of recyclables and organic materials. We do not need large containers to collect more of a building solid waste. It is not a good use of scarce public space, and the dumpsters would be a perpetual visual blight. Thank you, Anna. Claire?
You may begin.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself. Thank you. I'm Claire Mifflin, Executive Director from the Center for Zero Waste Design. We're a nonprofit that develops research, advocacy campaigns, and policy tools for buildings and the city to achieve zero waste. We've been advocating for waste containerization since 2017 with the Zero Waste Design Guidelines. And we provided strategies to do that in our advocacy campaign, Put Waste to Work, which called on the incoming Adams administration to come up with a comprehensive plan to reduce waste, reach zero waste goals, containerize waste to improve quality of life, and to support composting to ensure city soils are made healthy with compost. So we're really frustrated that Department of Sanitation haven't put together a comprehensive plan at all, leaving City Council to try and add bills to ensure that zero waste and environmental justice goals and composting is all happening. And we really appreciate City Council for that. But we see this huge lack. There's been a huge lack of engagement with stakeholders, even across city agencies. And we can't have a successful waste containerization plan without considering how can we reduce the amount of waste we produce to start with? How can we make it better for streetscapes? How can we make it easier for the bids and the small business owners and everyone trying to keep our city clean? We recently released a report called On Containerization. We had a panel discussion. It went in detail about better ways that we can containerize all waste and recycling and food scraps so we can get to zero waste goals and improve streetscapes. But I don't know if it's even been considered by the administration because there's such a lack of collaboration. So this suggests how containerizing waste can not just hide the trash and help for litter and rats,
but it can improve labour, improve streetscapes, reduce the burdens on business, bids and building owners. So we think the huge investment in a waste containerisation plan just for trash that's not really thought through is short-sighted. And we're against all the bills containing waste containerisation. Sorry, just let me quickly say I'm against those bills.
Mute her, please. We're moving now to Camelia Tepilis. Thank you.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Do you hear me? Hello?
You may begin.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Camelia Tepelus. I'm the Executive Director of the Morris Park Business Improvement District in the Bronx, a bid with $390,000 in assessment, 1 full-time staff member, paying 2 full-time supplementary sanitation staff from our vendor Street Plus that testified earlier, that costs $153,000 a year to clean up sidewalks along 21 blocks of commercial corridor on Morris Park Avenue in the Bronx. And no, our work is not exactly the same like the work of our individual members, because cleaning up 4 corners on 21 blocks is not the same like a single business putting their trash in a single trash can. I'm an admirer of Commissioner Tish's work, which I consider to be transformative for the city and arguably may become the most substantive impact of the Adams administration on the city. I share with Ms. Tish being on the list of New York City and State Above and Beyond Innovators 2023 issue on exactly the same page. I thank the 2 co-chairs of this hearing for the very pertinent questions related to the bids and the public trash that we collect to make our neighborhoods beautiful. It was stated that there were a lot of misunderstanding in terms of the quote-unquote bids trash, and of course there are, because we have been asking DSNY for something in writing, the proposal of these proposed changes for months. The fact that DSNY does not want to provide us with anything in writing, no document whatsoever, I mean, leaves us in a place impossible to plan, to consider in our budget, to approve by our boards of whatever investment is necessary. We are looking forward to work with DSNY. We are supporters in this project, and we want our streets to be free from rats. But just to share with you an example of an experiment that Morris Park did, anticipating this legislation, we instructed our workers to put all trash that is now in bags next to trash cans, to put it in the trash cans.
Thank you. We're moving now to Pedro Suarez from 3rd Avenue Bid.
You may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Pedro Suarez, Executive Director of the 3rd Avenue Business Improvement District, also known as the Hub, which is located in the South Bronx. I represent a community of over 300 businesses, over 18 block faces, in one of the most heavily trafficked bids in the city. I respectfully caution the city to not underestimate the rollout of containerization in small bids. Examples of successful containerization in some communities in Manhattan do not reflect the challenges in communities in the South Bronx. For example, bins and litter baskets are stolen. Bid bags are not the only bags left on the street. My bid has issues with street vendors, residential tenants, and other individuals regularly leaving bags and dumping trash and cardboard that my staff have to address. We have issues with vehicles overnight regularly dumping trash, industrial waste, such as toilets, air conditioners, planks of wood, and more. We have issues with homeless encampments and individuals regularly defecating on the street. We have pictures of all of these scenarios. Permanent street containerization in my bid would cost anywhere between $25,000 to $50,000, over 10% of our annual city funding. We already have 1 set of 8 containers, also known as city bins, and these containers have attracted quality of life issues, including homeless encampments, defecation, illegal dumping, and drug use. Wheeled out containers are not an option, as the bid has very limited options for storage. Most recently, we conducted a walkthrough with Councilmember Rafael Salamanca and DSNY Commissioner Tish to discuss challenges around illegal dumping, and there is a need for additional DSNY cameras to conduct illegal dumping investigations. I look forward to further conversations with SBS, DSNY, DOT, elected officials, and the Mayor's Office to create implementation strategy that is responsive to the needs of my district and the people of the South Bronx. Thank you. Thank you, Pedro, for testifying. I believe that's our last person to testify online. This hearing is hereby adjourned.